Maria.
Welcome to the Town of Summer Zoning Commission. This is a special meeting on Monday, October 21st, 2019. Present on the board we have Dan Ferrero, Carl Walton, myself, Jill Conklin. Also with our meeting tonight we have Glenn Chalder with Planometrics and Jeff Board, the town engineer. And we have Bud Knorr, the town selectman, first selectman. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with public comments. I'm going to actually hand the meeting over to Glenn. The mic is on. Can't hear it? Move closer.
No.
Come on up. So we're going to start the meeting with Glenn Chalder. He's going to address you, and we're going to get some comments. And I see Attorney Carl Landolino's entering the room. Landolina. So we're all set to go. Yeah, when you make comments, we're going to ask that you come forward. There's a microphone set up right here in the middle of the room. We're going to ask that you use that microphone. Just state your name and address and your comment. Paige Rassett is here as well.
Yep, that's for her.
Good to go.
Is the mic on? That sounds like it.
Yep.
My name is Glenn Chalder from Planometrics. I've had the pleasure of working with the town of Summers over the past year on the zoning regulations and updates to the regulations. I've also had a chance to work with the town on the plans of conservation and development, so I'm familiar with a lot of the issues in the community, and I'm pleased to have this chance again to take our current zoning regulations and try to update them for the issues the community is facing now and is likely to face in the future. Everybody does PowerPoints these days, but I put together a PowerPoint to just give you a quick overview of the work that we've been doing, and that will hopefully give you some basic information. And if you have questions, that's why we're here tonight. So first of all, zoning regulations are the main tools that communities use to guide land use and activities in the community. We identify certain zones where uses are permitted, or we establish different standards, but it's really the zoning regulations themselves, along with the zoning map, that create this structure in Summers. The Zoning Commission recognized that the regulations hadn't been updated in some time, so there were three things they wanted to try to accomplish. Number one was update the regulations to reflect important issues in the community, to also incorporate changes in case law and state statutes so that our regulations are current as of 2019. Reorganize the regulations to try to make them easier to use, so if any of you had questions about what's permitted in the different zoning districts, hopefully you could find it fairly quickly. Even if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, there's nobody at town hall to call, you can find what you need. And finally, to revise the sections to try to make them easier to read. So we're trying to get rid of jargon, try to explain things clearly. We've added illustrations and other things in there because, as they say, pictures worth 1,000 words. So those were our main objectives as we started this process overall. Purpose of tonight's meeting is to give you a sense of what we've been working on and get your comments and feedback so we can continue to make the regulations better. In terms of organization, the regulations are broken down into 4 main pieces. Basics I'll talk about in a moment, zones and uses, standards for parking and lighting and signage and other things, and then the procedures that would need to be followed to get approval for some level of activity. So hopefully right off the bat, if you think about the type of question you might have with regard to zoning, you can figure out which one of those boxes you might want to be headed for, and I'll explain them a little bit more as we go to make it even clearer. So the section in the regulations that I call basics here really has one section in it, which is the statutory authority that the town has to adopt these regulations. The purpose is we incorporate the zoning map into the regulations. The regulations are set up in a way to say that if a use is not listed, it's not permitted. So we're starting from a position that we're going to identify the uses and activities which are permitted, and this is fairly common in the regulations, and it's a strategy, again, I recommend for Summers. This is the way you've been doing it for some time, so it's not anything new. The second major part of this is the definitions, words and terms. We have done a couple of things here. We have used these blue boxes to group like terms together. So that, for example, this situation here talks about principal and accessory. In zoning, we talk about the concept of a principal building and accessory building. They go together, and the principal is the major activity, and an accessory, for example, a principal use could be a residential use, and the principal building would be the house, and an accessory structure could be a doghouse in the yard, or a tool shed, or other things like that. The other thing we've done is we've added graphics in here. These graphics here show how we measure building height. And for certain roof heights, we're going to measure the total height from the finished grade to the top of the structure. And some other types of buildings, we actually measure from the finished grade to halfway up the roof in terms of a hip or gambrel or other types of roofs like that. So we tried to clear up the definitions, organize them, and add pictures to make them clearer. That sets the foundation, if you will, for the regulations. Most people, when they use a set of zoning regulations, are interested in what can I do with a piece of property. And traditionally that reads, every property is in a zone, and every zone has a list of permitted uses. And it's this section where you would find it. Section 3 of the regulations is residential districts. It identifies the uses, principal and accessory uses that are permitted. It identifies the dimensional standards that apply. And then some other standards related to things like home occupations, age-restricted housing, open space subdivisions, accessory apartments, and similar types of things. As part of our work here, we've proposed to add a new zoning district. It's shown on these maps in orange. We're calling it the residential A2 district. Most of the zones in Summers have a 1 acre minimum lot size, but these orange areas, many of the lots were laid out before the adoption of zoning. They're smaller than 1 acre, and so as a result, they're challenged with side yard setbacks and other standards which are designed for a 1 acre lot. And these areas, should somebody want to add on to their house or do other types of improvements, would generally have to go get a variance to have that happen. But all the lots are the same and all the people are the same. So we've adopted standards for these to reflect the lot sizes in these areas and reflect more closely what's on the ground. We've identified use tables in the regulations that identify the uses which are listed in the different zoning districts, what's permitted, what standards apply, what type of approval is required. We've organized the dimensional standards onto a page so you can quickly find the information that you need. And again, we've added some standards for certain uses to provide some additional clarity. We've done the same approach for business and industrial districts. We've identified the uses and structures which are permitted, the dimensional standards, the special regulations for the commercial recreation zone that's called PAR there. And we've also talked about establishing a village district in the center areas. A village district is a special type of zoning district in Connecticut which gives the commission substantial influence over the aesthetics of a development. So this is only applying to the village center areas in Summers and Summersville, but it's meant to provide some architectural review authority. Again, use tables for the different zoning districts and the area dimensional standards as well. We're up to section 5 of the regulations. There's 2 special districts in Summers. One is the floodplain overlay district. This is areas of town which are potentially subject to flooding from rivers backing up or from rainfall coming down, etc. The federal government requires us to have a floodplain district so that the people in the district are eligible for flood insurance through the national government. So these standards are here for that. In addition, within the last 5 years for sure, the town has adopted a planned development district which is meant to address the unique circumstances which exist at the Summersville Mill, and this regulation is designed specifically for that, and over the long term it may have some applicability to other areas of Summers. Section 6 of the regulations outlines some standards for some uses which may occur or may not occur. We have a section here on prohibited uses, horses and ponies, temporary uses, public utilities, alcoholic beverages, wood-burning furnaces, some other standards. That is also followed up by our standards section, which identifies things like signage, parking, illumination, landscaping, stormwater, soil erosion and sediment control, corner visibility, historic significance, just a whole host of standards in here for the types of things that would come along with a commercial site plan. These generally would not often apply to a residential use or situation. Section 8 of the regulation contains some special provisions. One of these is dimensional exceptions, where there are certain situations where we allow a cupola on a house to exceed the height limit, or a church to have a higher steeple, situations such as that. Under zoning, there is a special situation related to non-conforming conditions. This is historic buildings or sites or properties or uses which predated the regulations. And they're afforded some special protections, and those are outlined here. And we have standards for telecommunication facilities, earth removal and filling, and adult-oriented establishments. And then finally, the last section, or the last major section of the regulations, relates to procedures. There are certain ways that people might be able to get permits. In certain situations in the regs, no permits are required. Regs say you can just go ahead and do this. In other situations, you can get a zoning permit from staff, or you might have to come and see the commission for a site plan or a special use permit. If you wanted to change the regulations or change the map, you would file either a text amendment or a zoning map amendment. In certain situations, if the regulations as applied to a particular piece of property impose a hardship, there is a provision for the Zoning Board of Appeals. And so this outlines what somebody would actually have to do to go ahead and get a permit. So that's the main organization of the set of regulations. Again, it's most common that people would want to figure out what they could do with a piece of property. Then they look to see if any standards applied. If needed to, they could always check back with the definitions and the pictures and illustrations to understand the concept. And this is where we want people to get to quickly, the procedures, so they can figure out what they need to do to get started on their project. The zoning map is being updated from a manual map to a digital map. The changes which are proposed as part of this map are identified. We have a 3-map sequence over here. The existing zoning map is on the left. The map on the right is the proposed zoning map. And the map in the middle shows the colored properties where changes are being proposed. Those mainly are the addition of the A2 residential districts. Those are the orange parts of the map, both in Somersville and Somers. The establishment of a village business zone in the center of Somers, commercial recreation zone at Sunny's Place, and then some industrial zones are being extended to the end of the property line, because sometimes right now the zone cuts through the middle of a piece of property. So the commission has been working on these for about a year now. We think these are improvements. We're, again, hoping to address the important issues, reorganize the regs to make them easy to use and understand, and clarify the language. So at this point, we're looking forward to public comment.
Yeah. So maybe, if you'd like to come up, if you have any questions or comments, you can come on up to this microphone right here.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
And then just your name and your address.
Joseph Duffy, 3 Meadowbrook Road. When you put in the special use permit for a residential A, in the new regulations you put in the words place of worship open to the public. In the previous the regulations are in force right now, you use the term place of worship or religious institution. Could you give me the background behind dropping the term religious institution from it?
I have to see where you are, hold on.
That's zone
A zone.
That's an A zone.
Special use permit.
Hang on,
Let me see if we can find where it was.
right here. I
I
don't
believe
know.
it was a conscious effort to
Well,
delete.
I don't know,
No.
everything that changes in here is red.
You mean a recent conscious effort? No.
Yeah.
No?
So that the new term is place of worship open to the public.
I think they're functionally the same, but if you think the phrase religious institution is important, you can add that back in.
Is there anywhere where the phrase religious institution is defined?
No. I looked for it. It's
No.
not.
It's defined by the IRS very clearly.
Right.
The federal government defines it very clearly. But the town of Summers doesn't define it very clearly.
Can it be defined and added to where you have all the other definitions?
Not sure that we need to do that. I was just gonna mention, I think, we've done a couple of things in the regulations. We've identified early on in section 2, which is the definition section, that,
No, I
words
couldn't
and
find it.
terms used most common in the regulations are defined herein.
What was
Words
it?
not defined herein, the commission can refer to the building
Not
code,
that
state
line, no.
statutes, what's called,
Why is it there?
the illustrated book of development definitions, Black's Law Dictionary, or a common dictionary. So if a word, and again, I'm not picking on a religious institution, but that would be a word or a phrase that we could look up and quickly get to what it is we mean. But I think you're suggesting that the phrase should be added back. Is that fair?
No, I'm just saying that the IRS defines it clearly. The town of Summers or the state of Connecticut doesn't.
For the record, Carl Anthony, we would never use the IRS's definition of anything in our zoning regulations. It would be inappropriate to do that. They have specific regulations that deal with tax consequences of certain entities and so on and so forth, but it wouldn't be appropriate to use an IRS definition to determine how to define a use of a piece of property in this town or another town. I'm not aware of any town in the state of Connecticut that would ever go to the IRS regulations. And having tried many of these types of cases all the way to the Connecticut Supreme Court, I've never read a case where if a word's not defined in the zoning regulations, that anyone would go to the IRS regulations and say, this is how the word is commonly used. You wouldn't do that. There are no cases that would suggest that you would do that, and I don't think that would be appropriate. So,
Joe,
but the issue of whether or not religious institution, that term needs to go back in, that's entirely within your discretion.
Right.
is that a copy of our old zoning regs you have there that shows
Yeah,
that?
it is.
Okay, can I see that? Cause
I think it
we're
is.
trying to find it in
Okay.
our old book.
It's on page.
Oh, this
Under the current
Schedule of
regs,
uses.
schedule of
these uses are permitted by special permit in every zone.
Right.
I assume that hasn't changed.
Right, place
No,
of
it has
worship
not.
or religious
Right.
institution, special use permit,
Right.
all zones.
And there is a federal guideline that
Yeah.
requires that to be
Okay,
there.
so you're,
You cannot
Generally speaking, that would
discriminate.
be true, yes.
yeah,
Pages.
place of worship, this is 21473. Place of worship or
Does it need to be
religious,
defined?
place of worship or religious institution. Place of worship open to the public.
If you want, Glenn and I to try to come up with a definition for the regulations, I suppose we could.
But it doesn't say religious institution anymore, like that was dropped in one of our,
Yeah, the old regs
so
say
why would you
pub-
define something if it's not in there?
You're saying in the current setting?
In the current
In the
revision.
in the current
Yeah,
revision,
I didn't think it was.
In the current
It's just-
revision,
it's
it's
just,
not there. In our existing regulations,
It's there.
That's what this gentleman is saying.
Right.
In your old regs, the ones that are in place now, and in the proposed set, you've taken that term out.
Out.
So
They-
if you apply for SUP before the new regs come in, is the old SUP evaluated by the current zoning
Whatever regulations,
standards from beginning to end?
whatever
Right.
regulations were in place at the time of the application are the
Correct.
ones that would be measured against.
Right.
So what you're telling me is the federal definition of a religious institution is not relevant, but neither the town of Summers
Well,
nor the state
no.
of Connecticut defines
What
specifically.
he said was IRS
IRS.
definition is not relevant.
Okay. Difference between IRS and federal?
World different.
Okay.
Tax law and,
So the federal definition would come into play, is that correct?
It could,
Okay.
we haven't gotten that far yet.
you know,
All right.
but
Thank
the
you.
IRS definition would not be applicable.
worship or religious institution. Thank you.
I think he's gonna want that back.
Oh, Joe, do you want this back? Thank you.
Nancy Rodriguez, Hall Hill. Can you wait till you're in the microphone so we can hear it? It won't-
Rodriguez, Hall Hill Road. I just had a question because I did compare the old I downloaded from earlier in the year, before the last meeting, and then I looked at the revised, which does have different pictures and things like that, but I tried to go through it as best I could and take notes to compare, and it looked like everything was very similar for the information in which I was interested. But someone earlier said that the revised copy that's online has the changes between the two in red, but that is not the case. Do you,
Yeah, so if I can jump.
you know what I mean? That's all
Yeah.
I'm wondering, because if it's not highlighted in red as a change between the two documents, then that means you have to scrutinize maybe a little bit closer.
Right, I mean, I can answer.
I got called on the microphone issue as well, yeah, thank you. So when we're dealing with a project like this, it gets very complicated. We've been working on this for, over a year. We're probably on our 5th or 6th version. So for the commission's purpose, what we do is we revision mark between each version. So if there's red lines in here, on this September, I think it's the September date, that shows revisions from the prior version of May.
From
From the
August,
version before it.
which was
So-
August.
Oh, but the August, because the ones I have are May,
Right.
but I tried to follow on what was happening.
Well,
Yeah, so from May till the most recent, you may not see red marks
'Cause it went
showing the
May to
relevance,
August to now.
because there were other versions in between.
Okay, and are those other versions are accessible? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so, but
Yeah.
they're also no longer current versions.
Right, but to look at what changed.
Yeah, no, over time, I think you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only challenge is that if you, tried to go back to our first draft and expected to catch the red line from the
No,
current.
I think I'm just most happy with the recommendation to keep the A zones as A zones. Yeah.
Again, for the record, Carl and Lena, it would be virtually impossible in a project of this scope to go back to what's in place now and to show you how it's changed or morphed into what it is.
Oh, over a
What's
year,
being proposed.
absolutely, I
You-
get,
you-
I get
You
it.
couldn't do that because the
I
whole
just
thing's
wanted
been
to know, I
reorganized.
was checking
Yeah.
against the incorrect.
Right,
I
yeah.
missed the August, that was
Yeah.
my question.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Dick Hutton, 213 Penny Road. Can you show us a blow-up of the proposed new commercial amusement footprint?
I think, can I show you a blow-up? No, I cannot. I can show you on the zoning map.
I've seen it there.
Yeah, I think essentially what it is the area which is subject to the special permit for Sunny's Place. So it is the parcels which are part of their operation. So if I can go past you to the map, is that okay?
That's too small, it doesn't show you much.
Well, I think, yeah, so it's
The reason I ask is since you've been going on this process, things have been added, so where are you at it?
yeah, I think that, the commission will continue to, approve applications that come before it or act on applications that come before it right up until the time the new regulations go into effect. So even on the day before the new regulations go into effect, they could approve something in town under the current regs. I think that was Carl's point earlier.
Right.
Do I understand it correctly? Whatever's there will be included, but there will be no expansion?
I think the provision in the commercial recreation zone breaks the activities and the facilities apart. It says the facilities are there, they're on the ground, those are grandfathered. The activities that would go on, such as number of concerts per year or other special events like that, the new regulations request that they declare their activities. The commission approves them. As long as those are the activities, they can continue to renew them annually. And if they decide to ask for more concerts or more activities such as that, then they would come back to the commission and ask approval for that.
I was referring to the area.
So are
If
you,
they wanted to change the area, they'd have to come back to the commission.
Dick, are you referring to the area because part of it now includes Halloween activities and stuff like that that are separate from Sunny's Place?
I don't think so.
Okay, because those are on separate parcel of property and they're not connected to Sunny's Place.
And what are you referring to?
The haunted hayrides and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I know Can you have that blow up for the public hearing for us? And have somebody
That's a good suggestion.
described it as in relationship to what's there?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And it is confusing because it does encompass a couple of different parcels. It's not just, the approved use for Sunny's Place affects one parcel. There's additional land there they already own.
I don't understand that.
Okay.
As long as you explain it at the public hearing, what's included and what isn't.
It would probably be helpful if the, I don't, is the proposed zone line follow property lines?
It, I don't remember in the final outcome if it did or not.
The proposed, because right now there is no commercial.
There is no zone.
So you're creating one, and
Correct.
my question, would help this gentleman, if you show property lines in addition to the zone line. I
Right.
assume that the zone line is gonna follow property lines, because we've gone through that for many years. Where
Right.
Zone lines don't follow property lines, but I don't know, in this case it may not.
Well, it follows property lines, however, they do own other property. And we received correspondence today from,
Them.
representative of the company asking if they can include the other,
Piece of property in the zone.
I think it's a Carl anyway.
I mean, some of this is new, Carl, so.
So I think the suggestion is about having the map, Jeff Ford, the town engineer, has the ability with the GIS system and aerial photographs to make that map. So we'll certainly have that prepared for the public hearing, so thank you.
My name is Janet Warnock. I'm from Maple Street in Somerville. Can you explain to me what the A2 zone does in regard to the lots, where you talk about historical housing and change in lot zoning or whatever? I'd like to fully understand what exactly is proposed in the A2 zoning for that.
Yep, thank you very much. So the A2 zone is essentially the same as the A zoning district which existed there before. The major change in the zone is the dimensional standards. So right now, pretty much every zone in the...
Every lot.
Thank you. Carl knew where I was going.
I'm listening.
Every lot in the district of the A2 is non-conforming today. So if anybody wants to add on or modify anything on their lot, they're limited by the lot coverage standards for a larger lot, for the setbacks for a larger lot, and all the zoning standards. So we recognized again that that was a challenge or a hardship for smaller lots, and so we made the minimum lot size closer to what those lots are. So I can't say, for example, that your lot, if you live there, would actually become conforming, but it's more conforming, and the lot setbacks have been reduced to reflect what's out there on the ground. So it's more likely that if you said, I'd like to add on to my house, that you could do it without having to apply.
It's like Maple.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we're not gonna, zoning's not gonna do that.
Yeah, as far as
Well-
historical, like when you say, is any of this, I look toward the future, and
Yeah.
if my husband and I, we presumed we had any of the land, we don't, because the portion had been sold to someone previous to us buying. Like the future of a tiny house or an in-law house being detached from a home, are any of those regulations changing for people who live in 200-year-old homes?
I don't know how to answer that question. We have, I think, made some changes to accessory apartment regulations, but I think
No,
those were
gotta
fairly
be
modest or
Yeah,
minimal.
attached, yeah.
And our intent was not to make a major change. So if you couldn't do it today, I don't think the intention of the regulations was to allow that to happen in the future. Or if it was going to be permitted, you would then need to perhaps apply to the commission to get approval to do that.
Will we individually be told what changes will go to our lot, what opens up to us, or what the changes for individual residents are?
I would urge you to go ahead and take a look at the regulations. As the lady had indicated, the regulations are available down here at Town Hall. They're online. The existing regulations are online, so you can actually, and I think that I would urge you to check the dimensional standards. That's the area where the major changes have happened. And in terms of the uses that are permitted, I think it's much more clear in the current regulations how they're organized. I think we went through this whole situation in the existing regs. The use table is not particularly clear. But I would urge you to take a look at that. I believe our intention, I'm speaking for the commission, was to modify the dimensional standards to make it easier for homeowners with smaller lots, and not to change the use configuration in the regulations overall.
You're welcome to stop in anytime, and I can look at your specific property and we can discuss it anytime.
Good evening. My name is Ken Pryor, 364 Mountain Road. In the current regulations, there's a section about expiration of zoning permits, special use permits. I didn't see it in the new one. Did it go away?
Well,
For instance, if a special use permit shall expire upon abandonment of the buildings or structures, or if the allowed special use permit has ceased for a continuous period of 1 year.
I don't,
If I may.
yeah.
I don't wanna jump in here for Carl, but I think there's been a couple of evolutions in state law over the last couple of years on this. The first one is addressing the whole issue of abandonment and what constitutes abandonment. And the second thing is a recent court case, I think within the last 3 months, Carl, in Carl Fairfield. It basically says a special permit doesn't expire. It gets filed on the land records and it rolls forever. So the issue is the language which is in our current regs that says a special permit expires is not valid under the law. So these are situations where we try to clean stuff like that up.
So they don't have to renew them every year?
No.
There are, some types of
There you go.
activities which are allowed to, put a term on a special permit. For instance, the one that most towns do is the excavation type permit, where there's activity that's changing the landscape on a piece of property. Those, the courts have said you can still put an expiration on those. But, if I was coming into town and I need a special permit to build, I don't know, pick something up, a Walgreens, that never expires. Once it goes up, that's it, runs with the land. Unless I put in writing that says, I'm no longer gonna use this as a pharmacy, I'm gonna change the use to something else. But as Glenn said, the question of abandonment, there are a couple of new statutes that talk about what it means to abandon something, and our old concept of what abandonment meant 10 years ago is different than what it meant last year, and now it's totally changed again. So it's difficult to prove an abandonment. But
That answers my question. Another thing that was added in here was wineries, breweries, and distilleries in a A1 zone. That's concerning, that we can possibly have wineries, distilleries in a residential zone. I know these things are popping up everywhere, all over the state, and I mean, they do just fine in industrial areas. I don't see the need to have these in our neighborhoods. We're pretty much gift wrapping this for Worthington Pond. And I mean, it's obvious to me.
Inflow breaks in industrial area.
90% of that industry, the juice is imported. They put up a couple of grapevines and they import the juice and call it a winery. I have relatives in the industry that own a winery, so I have firsthand knowledge of this. I think it's a bad precedent for the town if we put this in there.
Thank you for your comment. We did make this change. We were trying to be agricultural friendly. But I think we'll take your comments and add them into our conversation moving ahead. Thank you very much.
Ralph Williams, Springfield Road. Apropos of the discussion of the zoning map, in addition to having one ready for the public hearing, I would suggest that that whether it's an enlarged, expandable PDF or something like that, the proposed zoning map should be online along with the regs. That's just one proposal.
Okay.
One other thing, I was intrigued to see that the latest draft of the village district, in talking about the various forms a consultant would take for reviewing proposed change, talks about possibility of the design review board. I don't know whether that would be the creation of the zoning commission or the selectmen. I think
It actually already exists.
Yeah.
It does?
Mhm.
Mhm. Okay.
Yep.
Did not know that. I think it's wonderful. One of our ZBA members at the last meeting was talking about when he was a East Hartford police officer, about how useful it was, and he had never heard of it being used, being kind of a rookie to zoning, and somebody's never done it. But I think it's a wonderful thing, but I think it should be considered in a vast array of districts of proposal, and not just for the village district.
Thank you.
So,
Oh.
again, for the record, Carl Angelina, the statutes that permit a village district specifically authorize zoning commissions to use design review boards for aesthetic concerns. There's no such language in any other statute that would allow towns to impose a design review standard in any other zone outside of a village zone. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't exist. There are towns in Connecticut who, in my opinion, flaunt the law and make you go to design review even if you're not in the village district. I think it's inappropriate and invalid. But right now, the only way to have a design review board is for them to review designs of properties within the village zone. So, thank you. Yep.
Any other public comment?
Questions?
Concerns, questions?
Hi, Vicki Clark, Mountain Road. We were here at the last meeting and you were discussing some of the changes. I don't see them in here regarding blasting, about following the DEP regulations. Maybe I am not seeing it in here, but I know it was discussed and I don't see it as an update.
Did we give that to you when you were here last meeting, Glenn?
Say that again, Carl?
Did we have that discussion? I don't remember if it was when Glenn was here
It was.
or it
It
was,
was.
okay.
If you have, if you can find it on your phone online, you can look at page 150, which is section 8.4. This relates to the requirements for earth removal and filling. And so what it says under this section is that any blasting associated with the excavation, removal, of earth products shall require approval of a separate special use permit by the commission, and any guidelines issued by the DEP will be one of the considerations. Currently, right now, we've highlighted the language that says web link to the DEP guidelines not found, and what I'd like to do is put that web link right in here, but I just haven't found it yet, so,
I don't know if they're actually online. It was a document I submitted to the zoning board.
So in that case,
I
we-
can send it to you.
yeah, no, I did, but I think
Yeah, we have it.
it's always best if
probably
there's,
tell us what it is,
a
right?
quick reference and somebody can go see it.
Yeah,
Say
it
on file in the
It
office.
wasn't an
Carl knows
online
where it is.
document. It was something that somebody there
This
created.
works,
So it's, I mean,
he's on conservation.
I guess it's good to know the source of it,
Yeah.
where it came from,
I
and,
got it for you.
yeah,
I'll send it.
okay.
And then the other thing we may say, we may just truncate it, any guidelines issued by the DEP, because
Because they might
somebody
change.
is, but not only that, but if somebody DEP created, but it hasn't been blessed by the department, then
Right.
it really can't use it. So I think what we'd like to do is just reference in here that there are guidelines. Go.
Okay, thanks.
And thank you for all your time that you guys have done too.
Give that to Glenn. Might help him search.
Yeah.
Oh, you got it. He's got it. You can have it back.
Any other questions? This went very quickly.
Really?
Really?
Nothing?
Nothing? That's it? Oh.
Last minute.
Oh, that's all right.
I'm trying to get clarification. Tom Clark, 175 Mountain Road. Just to clarify things with Carl, so the blasting we were talking about a little while ago, the special use permit. If someone is blasting, you're saying that they would have to reapply over a period of time, then it's not gonna be run with the land like you indicated before, some of the other use.
No, that.
Is that correct or no?
So
That-
all
yeah.
activities within that section, earth removal section,
Mhm.
Annual.
typically have, an expiration date. In your town, is it a year?
For,
Towns let you
for,
go 2
for,
years.
for gravel
Or a specific
operations,
amount,
yes.
or a specific amount,
Or
an
there's a
area, right?
there was
I
a
mean,
specific amount attached to the first approval that was given in the case that he was
In terms of
talking about.
cubic yards of material.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, and that's in statutes of 1,000 or less, I think it was, for cubic yards, correct?
so would that have a timeline on it as well?
Yeah.
Or just the,
No, but
The-
it's got a quantity
Well,
of
it's got a-
limit
No,
on it.
well, we
My
changed it.
concern would be that, you know, how do you know when 1,000 or 2,000 or 12,000 have been removed? Unless you're visiting the site and taking measurements, and it seems to me that I would prefer to see a regulation that just had a time frame. 1 year, you come back. If you finished your activity, you remove the, whatever it is in 1 year, if it's limited like that. I mean, typically, you wouldn't limit in earth removal when we're talking about sand and gravel. Blasting is a totally different thing. But if you're blasting, again, from East Granby, we're used to blasting 24/7 because of the salt mine up on Main Street. But, typically, you don't see a lot of blasting with sand and gravel operations.
Right.
So those typically have terms. I don't know if you have open areas, are you limited to 3 acres or 5 acres? What is the?
in order to blast?
No, let's say,
I think it was no more than 3.
it's 3 acres, you can't
Yeah.
have a 3 acres area open at any one given time, you can't expand. And so next year I come back and I get another 3, or if I'm not finished with the first 3, I just extend the permit. But it seems to me it's difficult in terms of enforcement to say, okay, we'll let you remove X amount of cubic yards of material and then you have to stop. You know?
And that parlays into my next question. If in fact, I think part of the site plan permit indicates that someone from the town can go up there and review. If the person does not let you review,
Well-
is there language for that?
So if there's an application pending, you give your permission for the town
Right.
to go up and take a look. If there's not an application pending, I just can't wander onto your property. It
Mhm.
violates the federal constitution.
I'm aware of
So-
that.
But with these things, since they're done on an annual basis, typically, as part of that review process, you're coming in to renew the permit, you're allowing the town to go on and look at your site.
All right, so if the permit's pending at that point, but if hypothetically, a permit's been withdrawn, then there's no oversight of what's going on, correct? There's no language in this, or new language that indicates, gives anyone in the zoning in
In
the
a
town oversight
hypothetical
of that.
situation, is that what you're asking me?
Pardon me?
You're asking hypothetically? There's no application pending, I can't wander onto your property now as a town official and look around.
No, I understand what you're saying.
That would apply to everybody in this room.
I get that, Carl.
Yeah.
But the fact, I'm saying, so there's nothing indicating that, it's just, there's no application, that's it, where it's just the work completes or continues and there's nothing.
We're getting really close to,
Real life
I'm
here.
asking, I'm just trying to get language,
Real
and
life.
just understand it.
yeah.
I think it's important, if I can jump in just for a
Yeah,
second
you can
here,
talk about it for a second.
the zoning commission does not have a lot of authority over blasting. Under
Right.
state law, that authority rests with the fire marshal. So if I decide I want to play on my property by blowing stuff up, I can clear that with the fire marshal, and I don't have to go to talk to anybody else. The only way that we get any avenue in there is if it's gonna be removed from the site.
Mhm.
And then now it's an earth removal operation, and if blasting's associated with it, you gotta come here, special permit, public hearing, and all of the other stuff. So we have, of the blasting world, we've picked up just that one little thing, and I think as Carl says, if it's sand and gravel, there's not a lot of blasting that goes on. So I wouldn't want you to think that the zoning commission is gonna be able to control everything.
No.
It's really only that little bit, and that's about as far as I think we can go, given the way these statutory authorities is set up.
So Glenn, to clarify, I think, just to reiterate, I think what the question of some residents is, so we had an exception of if you blasted 1,000 cubic yards or less, you didn't need a special use permit. What we've done is we've removed that 1,000 cubic yards or feet exception, and that we are requiring a blasting permit no matter what.
Regardless, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I think
That's our
that's how
new-
we
that's what
changed
we-
it.
I was trying to look for it, I couldn't
It's not in there in
Well, we'll
so
have-
many words.
Okay,
But
yeah, that's what I'm
we
trying to-
did discuss that.
We did.
For the intention, I think, of
So,
it.
Well,
what you're saying is the exception to the
Here,
permit process.
separate.
You know,
Yeah.
typically, if you've got a bona fide building permit,
Mhm.
you're allowed to remove whatever's necessary,
Mhm.
right, to dig your hole or whatever. Or typically, a landscaping operation. If you're planting trees and berms and forget about wetlands, but all the rest of the
Mhm.
stuff, that's a bona fide operation. And then the thing you would see in most towns would be, and then if you're doing anything else, we'll let you remove 200 yards, 300 yards, 1,000 yards,
Mhm.
whatever happens to
Mhm.
be. So what I'm hearing in this case, they've just taken out that third exception. That there is no, if it's not associated with a building permit or a landscaping operation, those two I think probably remain, right?
Correct.
And the third one that you get 500 cubic yards free, anybody does, that's come out. So that doesn't, with respect to blasting only or any earth removal activity.
Well, it's not, it doesn't say, what was it, 1,000 cubic? It
Right.
doesn't
It
say
was
that anymore.
1,000
It says
cubic.
any blasting associated with any excavation or removal of earth products shall require a separate special use permit by the commission.
That's just, okay, so. it's
Yeah,
more
so it
generic
looks
as
like,
opposed to-
yep.
Okay.
It's more restrictive than it was before.
Yes,
I
definitely.
think what I'd like to suggest, though, also for the commission's consideration, I'm looking here at section 8.4, which is earth removal and filling. So section 8.4A is the purpose, 8.4B says the following activities are allowed with no permit required. That's where we have the 1,000 cubic yards.
Right.
It doesn't say anything in there about blasting, so what I'd like to do, I think, is to add in here that the 1,000 cubic
No, no.
yards.
No, it does,
It-
number
On
2.
page 150.
Page
I
150.
understand, but
No.
8.4B.
He's saying they're in conflict.
Oh, unless it's provided in 8.4B.
I
Yep.
guess it's not the clarity that we would like to have. So I think if 8.4B says you can excavate up to 1,000 cubic yards with no permit required, provided it meets one of these, and there's 5 tests or 5 situations listed, But none of those has anything to do with blasting.
Right.
So in other words, somebody could come in here and try to argue with Jeff and with Jen that, well, it's less than 1,000 cubic yards, and it can't blast. And I think what we wanna do is make it clear.
Tie it.
Any blastings
Right.
for.
So you need to add a sixth condition to
No, I
that.
think I'm just gonna write it
Or-
into the first,
Yeah.
or into the first paragraph. So I
Right.
think that closes, we always hate
A bit of
loopholes,
loopholes,
and people
right.
argue.
Right.
I think, with your comments, I think we're gonna be able to address that.
I think, I appreciate it.
Jen Grader, Amy Lane. To add to that loophole,
We don't wanna add to the loophole.
well,
The
to
discussion is
clarify
loophole. There you go.
what seems to be a loophole, is I did talk to the fire marshal, so it seems like, you know, he gives the permit for the explosives to bring it over. He doesn't enforce zoning.
I understand.
So, but if these guys don't know about it in a timely manner, they could keep blasting. So, I realize
I think
in
we're
all
on
of
the
this,
same team. Fire marshal's on our team, so.
no, he's totally on our team, but I'm just saying, there is a bit of that, like, you know, he does
He
one
should
thing,
not be
the
issuing,
town
if
does another.
something requires a zoning permit, he should not be issuing it if he knows, that the zoning commission hasn't issued that permit. So he shouldn't just go issuing permits without the
If he
appropriate.
doesn't.
No, I don't
We
think
gotta
he
cover.
does, I'm just saying that can be a loophole.
But understand, there's other things I can blow up rather than my ground. I can decide to blow up my shed. That would require a zoning permit.
Who wants Carl for neighbor?
Don't move T. Scramby.
No, but what you're saying is that, just like a building permit, you need, if he's got a permit request for blasting, he goes to Jen and says, does this require zoning approval? And you say yes, and then the process stops.
Yes.
Until that's approved.
Well, correct, same as if we have a permit, for the gas station, they don't get issued till the fire marshal looks at it.
Right.
Vice versa, the fire marshal isn't gonna issue a blasting permit until I'm notified,
Mhm.
or,
Right.
I think we're good.
Anything else?
Karen Murdock, 24 Gulf Road. With respect to the wineries and breweries, I'd just like to say that I hope you promote agriculture in the town. and keep agriculture profitable so that not all large tracts of land end up turning into more development in town.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What,
I can't get it.
well, we'll bring over a microphone for you, Kathy.
I just want to thank you all for the hard work and the labor that Glenn and Carl and all of you have done over this period of time. It's taken a long time, but I'm very pleased with the results, and I want to thank you for your concern and your care.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Where's the microphone?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to review and discussion of the zoning regulation draft, and we're gonna take into consideration these comments we've heard tonight.
And correspondence.
And correspondence.
If you're over here. Like you're.
See, just wanna find out if Carl has any questions about the changes we made, right? Lynn? What? Who?
Carl, do you have any questions about the changes that we've made
Do I
thus
have any
far?
questions
Yeah,
on them?
or
Yeah,
comments?
comments on the
Cause you know
rates and
you've
stuff?
looked over,
Do you want to have them come up so we can?
do you wanna join our table up here with a microphone?
Or you can talk to someone on the side, whichever.
We should.
You want this one? No. Oh,
You want recess for
So-
a second?
yeah.
Sure.
Take a,
Should be on.
it is on. Let me, leave it quiet.
We should just tell them that we're gonna continue.
Okay,
on
we're
with the
gonna continue with our meeting here, so we need it to be a little bit quieter. So you're welcome to stay, or take it outside.
Take it outside.
What are you gonna do? What do you want?
Take that outside.
Not a permitted use.
No, I mean, okay.
So, the only thing that I'm still not clear, and this is my issue, not yours, I'm gonna make it yours at some point in the near future. I keep promising,
No
but,
time like the present.
so I haven't gotten there yet. Is the sign regulations, and Glenn and I had a little, brief chat this morning, and I said I was gonna call him at 11 o'clock. What time is it now?
It's
not
after-
11,
well,
not
after-
11
It's
yet.
not 11 yet, it'll be 11 twice.
Yeah, I'm at 11 this morning. So I still want to have a discussion with Glenn because, as he mentioned, was it 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, when were we last here?
It was about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, there's a recent Supreme Court case called Reed versus Gilbert, that, through municipal sign regulations sort of on the air. And the issue is that, what we thought we could do in terms of regulating signs, and distinguishing one sign from another, the Supreme Court, this is the US Supreme Court, says we can't. So what I have to get straight in my mind, and I'm not convinced one way or the other yet, I'm leaning one way, but I'm not convinced yet, is the use of area as a way of whether there's a connection between that and content. You're not allowed to, under the Supreme Court ruling, regulate content. Okay? Now, you shake your head and say, I know that,
No, but I
we've
know,
never done that.
but I know what
But-
you mean.
Yeah, so that if I'm
So are
allowed.
you saying that by not giving them a big enough sign, you're restricting what they can say?
No, but I'm saying if you're treating different types of signs differently by the size, you could be regulating content, and that's
Are
what
you
I.
talking
You can put the font
residential
any
only
size
All
you want.
across,
All
the
signs,
all
all
across.
signs.
There's
Yeah.
really two cases, because there's the US Supreme Court case related to content, but there's a Connecticut Supreme Court case which went through this tortured logic that when the statutes were adopted in Connecticut and gave the communities the ability to regulate sign, they used the phrase advertising sign, and at that time, the common use of the word advertising related to commercial marketing.
Right.
So if somebody wants to put up a sign on their yard, save the whales, that's not advertising.
So we don't have a right to regulate it.
So I think there are ways that our, world of signage regulation is being sort of
Shrunk.
changed and truncated in a
Yeah.
lot of different ways. I think, I'm not sure what Carl's opinion is on this overall. I think the issue here comes down to delicate enforcement of sign regulations. So, I think if somebody wants to take you to court and to the Supreme Court, that should be a wake-up call, like, hang on a second here, is this reasonable, right, or fair? But I think, the only regulations I've seen in Connecticut, Mike Ziska wrote the sign regulations for North Stonington.
Okay.
And he claims that they're Reed versus Gilbert proof. I don't think they're very good sign regulations. So the challenge, I think, for the commission
You mean
is,
from a planning perspective, or just,
I think from a legal perspective, they hit all the buttons.
right,
From a planning perspective, in terms of what people
They're-
want in their community, they're
it's
not
terrible.
that good.
So, because, and I haven't read them, North Stonington?
Yep.
I'll take a look at them. I suspect, I could be wrong, that what he's done in terms of, because if he's thinking along the same lines I am, that almost every sign is going to be, have a maximum size, that's it. So in the residential zone, you get so many square feet. Is it something like that?
Yep.
Yep. And the commercial, in the industrial zone, you get so many square feet. Whether it's a political sign or a, like I said, if, you've got your regulation that says I can advertise in a broad sense,
Yeah, yep. It's all considered an
Palazzo
advertisement.
Landolina on the front of my house, but I have to do that in 2 square feet. But if I want a for sale sign out front, I get 6 square feet. That's the question.
Right.
Is that regulating content? Because,
Yep.
so I'm guessing that's what Mike did. He basically narrowed down this, and said.
He did. So
Yeah.
I think in these sign regulations that, one of the provisions that's permitted without a zoning permit in every zone is a political or ideological signage. So if you wanna have a sign that says save the whales, 4 by 8 sheet of plywood, 32 square feet, knock yourself out. We're not gonna, shall not be displayed for more than 60 consecutive days.
Right.
And political signs pertaining to candidates or political issues in a national, state, or municipal election shall be removed within 5 days after the election.
Right,
Well, so we let people do it,
right.
but
We limit
Place-
how long or,
I think what Carl's saying is that, well, hang on a second here, we have a provision in here that allows for a for sale sign at 4 square feet. Isn't that content based? And I think my response would be, and I don't believe it's been tested by the court, is you get your basic level of signage. As an occupant of the property, I think you get 2 square feet. If you have home-based business, you get another 4 square feet. And if you want an ideological sign, you can put 32 square feet. So you can add all of those up. And the issue is, but if you also want to sell your property, you don't have to take down one of your other signs. We give you 4 extra square feet.
right.
So the issue, I think, is it's opportunistic rather than punitive. Where Gilbert, Arizona got themselves into trouble in the Reed case is they had a church in town, so right away alarm bells should go off with the church operation, that didn't have a defined facility, so they would move around, and sometimes that they would be in a community center, or sometimes they would be in a commercial building, or they'd borrow somebody else's church. They would put signs around town that says service this week here, and they got jumped on by the town and said, you can't do that.
But they can't
Yet,
do that.
the town had other regulations related to public assembly and similar types of things, and it seemed to them that they were picking on this church, and continued to pick on. So they, I think, I don't know if they split the lower court cases or what happened, but they finally said, you know what, we're taking this to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, you're allowing other signs, tag sales, special today on sandwiches, why are you picking on these guys? Is it because of the religious content? And that started the whole thing.
Right.
So I think there's also language in here, I can't put my hand on it right away, and it says, in the purpose of the sign regulations, second paragraph, in this
comes up from the court case. These sign regulations are intended to place restrictions on the time, place, and manner, which the court says you can do, all right? When, where, and how of signage, so that the purpose stated above may be accomplished. This includes restrictions on size, height, location, and number of signs that may be displayed. So, content is not specifically called out, and Jen, if you ever find yourself in a situation that it seems to be even remotely related to content, don't go there.
Right.
Okay? Call Carl.
Yeah.
Well, this is more for Jen than I guess you guys. So all of the materials that, believe me, every zoning lawyer in the country except myself have written something online about this, but generally the thought process is if you have to read the sign, all right, actually read the words on the sign to determine if the regulation applies to it, then it's content-based. So, in this particular case, and I understand where Glenn's going, and as a planning tool, I think he's done an excellent job. But the job for the zoning enforcement is basically just take a ruler and measure the damn thing, and then
Right.
if it complies or it doesn't comply.
6 feet by 1 feet, and it's okay.
So, beyond that, I'm still not, so I don't know,
So is there any
I
other?
promise, Boy Scout promise, I was a Boy Scout many years ago, that by the time, I guess what is your plan going forward? I assume you want to schedule a public hearing fairly soon? Or,
Yeah, we
To
probably got a
to
little
adopt-
more
to adopt these.
minor tinkering to do, yeah.
I
Yeah.
think there probably are. Carl, and I would prefer
He would
that
prefer to wait till
we-
after the
We
holidays.
don't end up that we have to wholesale change the sign regulations based on input at the public hearing. I'd like to have the public hearing be as straightforward as possible. I was very pleased tonight that you got an ovation for the work done so far. So sign regulations are a big enough issue. I would prefer, it may not be possible, Commissioner may just wanna go ahead. I would prefer to work out the sign regs before we pull the trigger.
I would too. I don't get the feeling that our sign regs have been turned into anything big up till now.
It's a delicate area, Carl's absolutely right.
No, I mean,
You gotta
I
be really
understand that.
careful. But I think it's the enforcement activity. Most people are gonna abide by the rules. But if you started throwing the book at somebody on a religious sign, or the situation that caused the court case in Milford that went to the Connecticut Supreme Court, a woman had hired a contractor to do work at her house, she was not pleased with the work of the contractor, was unable to resolve with the contractor, put a 32 square foot sign or whatever in her yard that said, don't hire, Joe
Joe the
Bob.
plumber, yeah.
And the contractor clearly didn't like this, it was kind of a busy corner, and instigated the
Oh,
town
well.
to do a sign violation. And the issue is that in fact free speech? It wasn't an advertising sign,
No.
and the case was, the statute says you can regulate an advertising sign. So if Milford had exercised any sort of thought process on this, it never would have gotten that.
they would have
far.
looked the other way, and that would have been the end of it,
Ignore it.
probably.
She would have gotten tired, I don't know. But they didn't, and they decided to go to the mat.
Yeah, that's my other
all the way
concern,
to
is
Supreme Court.
the free speech, on the political, I understand during campaign, that's a sort of its own animal, but, is it the intent here, and I have to read it again, I put a red mark near it, but, so that all political signs have to be taken down, or you can have them for more than 60 days?
Yeah, but they're down 5 days
They
after
have to
the
be down
election.
5 days.
No, well,
I mean, it depends, Carl,
no,
because,
it says political or ideological signs, that's different,
So
so
that's-
if I,
I think the
whatever.
bullet though,
Huh?
it says the bullet. So if somebody says, I wanna put up my sign, my
Well,
political sign.
What page are we
What
on?
page are you on?
I'm sorry, page 107, sorry. So we could break out that line, Carl, but the category E is political or ideological signage. The second bullet says political signs pertaining to candidates, parties, or issues in an election shall be removed within 5 days after the election.
Understood. I'm more concerned about the first one that says I can't have my 32 square foot NRA sign on my lawn 365 days a year. So, again, we're not making any decisions tonight, I'm just trying to explain to you,
yeah,
and I've been agonizing over not these particular regulations, but for over a year, and I still haven't gotten straight in my mind what I think is
Carl,
Yeah.
I share your
Yeah.
angst over this because as somebody who crafts regulations, particularly this issue, it is a difficult challenge
And I know that there's bills going into the legislature that are going to modify this whole advertising thing.
Mhm.
So it's certainly in a state of flux and likely will continue to be. If Jen was enforcing your sign has been up, NRA sign has been up for 60 days, take it down, I imagine she's gonna get some pushback on it.
Mhm.
And I think the response could be, just take it down for one day and screw it up tomorrow, you get another 60.
Right. I mean,
So, but somebody say, you know what, no, I'm gonna fight you all the way, I would say, Jen.
Yeah, it doesn't
you
say
really-
60 days in a calendar year, it says 60 consecutive days, and then
I
it's
know what
gonna
it
come
says.
You
down.
could do zoning citations and all the other stuff and fines, and you're just gonna exacerbate the situation, so I think.
In some
if-
cases,
We've had
we've had
Yeah, 'cause
That's what I'm
situations,
saying, we have had an
Yeah, 'cause
issue.
that's just
we
a-
have had
those are-
issues with people putting up signs which weren't business-related or political-related, they
Oh,
were
and they claim it's
philosophically.
political.
I'll give you an example. So there is a town in Connecticut, because I belong to the CAMA website, that's the Association of Municipal Attorneys, and one of the questions I got asked last week was, there is a gentleman who's running for national office in 2020, and he likes to get up and say things. And he had an 8-letter word that he used a few weeks ago. Began with a B-U-L-L and ended in a T.
Hmm.
And that is now, you can buy a T-shirt on the gentleman's website that says that word, and there are signs popping up all over Connecticut with that phrase on there in people's lawns. And the claim is that this is free speech, and it even though it's, so, I don't know how that's gonna turn out, but.
That happens.
What about the size?
That's
32
free
square
speech.
feet? Isn't that
Is
rather
that-
large?
Well, I mean, the idea here is 32 total, so if you could have 16, right? Isn't that what you're
On
talking
each
about?
side?
No, no,
Or
no.
double-sided?
No.
The double side is the
Four-
2 signs, but the 32 square feet
4 by
is
8.
on
It's a
any
4
one
by
property
8
total.
4 by 8 sign,
No, I'm saying you could have one 4x8,
or you could have two,
or it could have
Two 4x4s.
4x4s,
4x4s,
or,
single-sided.
Or cut it into 4, you
It says
could,
one sign per lot, it says.
one
No,
private.
it says,
So, Carl, to be
32 feet per lot.
it says on any one property, 32 square feet total.
Right.
Maximum number of signs,
Is that kind of big?
2F.
4 by 8?
One.
Excuse me, Carl, we've debated size of signs before,
Yep.
but if we were completely consistent across all of these categories,
It would make no sense, is that what,
I know it would make no sense.
it would
to-
make no sense to, what I'm suggesting would make no sense, to have one size.
But I'm
Right.
asking you,
Mhm.
is that more comfortable when it comes to, possible feedback about content and types of signs? Like now we've got, 6 different categories of signs. Should we have one category? Is that what you're trying to say?
I'm suggesting that perhaps I might get to that point, I'm not there yet. But I think, again, as Glenn said, that would be a terrible planning tool.
It would be.
It would be, to say, okay, in the residential zone, you get a total of 32 square feet of signage, and you can use it any way you want, and in this zone, you get so many square feet, and this sign,
So I mean, if we come down to that, I'm saying, okay, then let's do a 2-foot sign per property,
Yeah.
and get down to that. If that's where we go.
I think in crafting these and other regulations, I've tried to get to a situation where somebody has to give up their home business sign to have a for sale sign.
No.
I've tried to give them
Yes.
Right.
the
Well, we don't
access.
wanna
So the
do
issue
that
is,
anyway.
Well, the for
these
sale-
are the categories of what you can have, and if somebody decided to take max of everything they've got by having different content, their choice, not ours,
Mhm.
then you can have that. But we're giving a 32 square foot freebie, and that, Jen, on page 107, there's no limit to the
There's no
maximum
limit on the number
of
of
signs.
signs.
Oh, no, I was on page 108.
Oh.
No, 32
Reading
feet
ahead
per
again,
lot.
huh? Read it,
You know,
read it
we
ahead.
have permitted signs which go with businesses, you get a permit, a sign permit,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
And
but
then,
those
so
aren't
in
in here
addition to
either.
that, you're saying somebody can have a 32 square
No,
foot billboard
residential. We're
in a
talking about-
residential, if everybody
Well,
had
but
one
if
in
you
their
go
yard.
forward, I think
No,
Glenn
no.
correctly
How
says
would that look?
Fighting a constitutional right here. So if
Yeah.
somebody,
Yeah.
in Carl's example, if everybody in town decided to put up, or everybody in town has supported that candidate, decided to put up 32 square feet that has that phraseology on it, my advice to Jen would be, you know what?
Let it
This will
go.
all be over in a year, just
Yep,
let
or
it
less,
go.
or less.
Because I think.
But isn't that a political sign? If
Yeah.
it's associated with a
Yes.
candidate, so that
But
would be
it's
60
also-
days.
Joe,
Well, yeah.
free
But it's
speech.
still
But
an
it's still free
ideological
speech.
sign.
If you.
I mean, I would hate to have to look at that every
If
day.
you go after that or go after the parties, the Attorney General's office and the ACLU basically worked out a situation with municipalities, stop enforcing the limitations on political signs during election season. This is how our system operates.
Right.
So if you only enforce on one type of sign, you're going to get pulled in. So my advice is most people are not gonna do this. Let it go.
But the political signs are put up 60 days before the election.
I think what we've said here is if you wanna do it in compliance with the law,
Take it down for a day and put it back up.
and 5 days after. So if somebody still has it up 2 weeks after they went on vacation, I wouldn't.
Actually, it's a bad reflection on them. Most people
Exactly, and
just
that's
go.
why most-
And who wants
most
to
rational
see that
people
every
do
day?
it.
That's gonna be a
sign.
negative, it's gonna trigger negative
depends if they're keeping
response
it
in your
one.
head.
The word political does not only apply to elections and candidates.
Understood.
So it's a broader term than that, and certainly the word ideological is much broader than that. But anyway, it's a nice discussion we're having. Glenn and I will continue offline.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So, but generally, the way it's written is okay,
Yes, I think he's done a great job here.
once again.
So I think what I'd like to do is roll through the regs, so that maybe the only thing left hanging then would be the sign provisions. I didn't get very much tonight, in terms of, I have made a couple of comments here on things that we can or should talk about in public comments.
Yeah.
And then Carl is, I think we just go through section by section. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
No, I went back and read the commercial recreation, that was one of the other, and, I don't have a problem with it.
So the only comments,
Paige was asking if there was correspondence, and I was just saying, I ran out of copies, I gave you yours. One was, information about state regulations and requirements for winery, and that we consider that part of that, right? When we, you know,
She did
adding,
share.
so probably adding some of that. Obviously not the whole thing, because some of it relates to what the state, you know, like annual fee and such. I didn't have time to read the exact.
yeah, so I think, are you talking about the farm? So,
Right.
yeah,
for the
highlighted a
winery.
couple of things in there. So I think the
In,
basic question is whether or not the commission wants to allow a farm winery by special use permit in the A1. I think it is, correct? It's not permitted in the A, it's permitted in the A1. Not
Right.
permitted in the
Right.
A2.
no.
The
it's
A1
not-
is the,
is regular,
larger,
regular residential zone.
two acre zone?
No,
They're all
No.
1 acre.
they're all 1 acre.
Oh,
The only difference between them is certain
Uses.
uses.
okay.
Commercial uses, business uses, et cetera. A zone, basically prohibitive.
And then, a second comment,
And I'll answer your question. Yeah, I'm interested in keeping it that way.
Keeping it only in A1?
No, keeping it so we are encouraging an agricultural use in that kind of an area, as opposed to,
So gentleman
100
commented tonight,
house
he did not
subdivision.
favor it, but I think my only comment is maybe kind of not refereeing the process. It is a special use permit.
it is a special
If
use
somebody
permit.
wanted to apply for this activity, part of it really depends on if they are just serving tasting to people, which is what this allows under the
Understood.
state law, that's really not a big deal.
No,
There are situations in other communities where it has grown and expanded, becomes semi like a restaurant or bar situation. I think at that point in time, as part of the special use permit, I would urge you to review
Right.
it carefully and condition it carefully.
Right.
I think you could manage it and promote agriculture.
agreed. And I agree totally. If it wants to morph into music and other events and et cetera beyond wine.
The biggest problem comes, and I represented a couple of these guys who do this in towns where they try to do it, so, the biggest issue becomes the summer months and the outdoor activities.
Right.
The allowance of the tent
Right.
for weddings, and then, I'll give you an example. I just had a client of mine got permission to put up a tent at they grow apples, it's an orchard, all right? And now they're gonna start making hard cider, which is now permitted under the regulations, and they can make apple wine and so on and so forth. So the tent is there for special events. And they have permission to have 6 special events throughout the year. 6 weddings or what have you. The question then is, well, if I keep the tent up all year, which is typically what you do, right? You rent these tents, they come out in May first, and put up the tents all around the state, and then October 15th, these companies run around, they take them down. Why can't my customers, and not a special event, at any time go sit under the tent? So you need to be cognizant of that, you know, because if a tent fits 150,
Could
for
have
a special
150
event,
customers?
well, yes, I
Can
can
they-
tell
that
you.
whole
No, I know,
picnic
but I
there,
mean,
Can they have a birthday
A
party?
gathering of people who are at the winery
To me,
or
that's not a
whatever.
special event, so you
No,
have to
it's
be
not a
very
special
careful
event.
about.
It
That's
was
like
a
a mass
special event if
gathering,
they have
isn't it?
entertainment.
Wouldn't that be a mass gathering, like you're
It's
having
a-
an
it's a
event?
special
you
event
could
if they
say-
have entertainment
So
and
what Glenn is
stuff.
suggesting is that the tail starts wagging the dog here very fast.
It can.
If it's successful. So,
So I
Well,
think
it
this
just
is the same thing
evolves.
that happened with the commercial recreation zone, is it started small and grew. So I think as long as the commission conditions carefully as you go, I'm dealing with a situation right now in the town of Colebrook where it's a farm brewery, and it's kind of gotten out of control pretty quick. So I think you have to condition it carefully, and then I think it could be okay.
I agree, I mean, we
they grow
can't,
hops there at the, and that's the next up and coming thing, where people are gonna grow their own
we're,
hops.
we're the prime
Mhm.
place
That's
for
it,
it.
yeah. You know,
Yeah,
We are.
Tobacco
the soil
Valley.
here is great.
Yeah, perfect.
Tobacco Valley is a prime place for
Yeah.
if you wanna start growing hops.
So, and the gentleman's correct, I mean, you don't, it's not like, I don't, you know, if you look at the state regulations and the state definition, if I wanna make apple pies at my farm stand, you could probably put a condition on it that all the apples have to come from my property, maybe. But when you do wines and stuff like that,
You could do the same thing, but then they'd never produce anything, at least not initially, because they gotta have
Or enough.
that's what I'm saying.
enough
but-
years to
but
grow their own.
I don't know that there's any winery in the state of, and I could be wrong, that produces
100% of all
100%
their
of what
own, I
goes
don't
into
think
that
there is
bottle.
either.
50%.
even 50, right.
I don't think
It's
there
very
is
Probably
either.
even less.
The Connecticut grapes they can be good, but they're not that good. So I think that most places do mix with the California grapes to get a
Or
better-
wherever they can
better
get
wine.
them from.
Right.
Or they grow them for
So,
decoration.
I mean, do whatever you want, just be, and Glenn's suggesting, and I agree, that
What- We just
During
thought
the
it would
process,
be,
you have to be
we
very
thought it would
careful
be a
about what it
good
is
way
you're
to
approving.
promote people holding on to larger tracts of land,
Mhm.
especially ones who would like to put in a, grow area.
Mhm.
You know, I don't
I mean, the
think it's
downside
the
is
grow area that
subdivisions.
we're,
What?
I don't
No.
think it's the grow area that he's warning about.
No, it's the buildings
What he's
and-
warning
I
about
understand that
is the
page.
future,
Yeah.
It's
you
what
know,
it
what it
evolves
turns
into,
into.
whether it
Well,
turns
it's
into a
like-
wedding venue or not, but
Which is-
if we don't give a permit for that, and they have to come back for that, then they don't have permission to do that.
But the people, I've heard it from other people, they're just concerned that it's a residential zone and drinking and driving, leaving a venue,
it goes hand
you
in
know,
hand.
goes on.
in some ways.
It's
I
a
know.
tasting room.
Somebody can have a wild party at their
Their
house
house,
every weekend.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
a football
And it's
season,
legal.
the same thing. So
Yeah.
that's their liability, not ours. I think the issue is, perhaps as Carl mentioned, if we want to be agricultural friendly, more towns are doing more things
Right.
To encourage it.
for
Mhm.
supplemental
I
activities.
mean, whether it is an orchard and that they can have an
No,
event for apple picking or
I'm not
whatever.
suggesting that you not allow this, I think this is a great tool, to
Okay.
keep an agricultural community an agricultural community. But, as I say, the tail starts wagging the dog very fast if you're not very vigilant about.
I think
know.
we've learned that.
Yeah. So-
The first place we had in town that did amusement type stuff was very well behaved. Second one, not so much.
So I think it would make it simpler for me if we started going through section by section. Is that okay?
If you think we need to go through everything.
Well, I
page
just,
by page again.
because if there's gonna be tweaks or changes that the commission's gonna request, it helps me to.
Could we relate it to the comments that we got?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I
That's
think
what I got.
we're pretty happy
So
with
the first one I got
rest
is page 30. Page 30 is the comment about winery. There's somebody who commented, said they didn't favor it, there's somebody else who commented and said they favor it. Based on our most recent discussion, I think we're likely to leave it permitted in the A1 as a special use permit, but not permitted in the other zones, correct? Is that
of it.
fair?
Not permitted in
When
A.
including.
So yeah, we're still looking on page 30.
No, I
item
got you, but.
C5.
It's not A1. Or not an A2.
So residential A1, but not residential A2.
Yeah. So, existing proposed zone. So basically, the yellow areas on this map are the A zone. These are the
Well,
areas that have the
That
whole.
makes sense, because it's not likely that there's gonna be a parcel of land in the A2 that's 10 acres or more.
Correct.
Right.
It's mostly we defined the A2 very closely based on the prevailing lot sizes, so
Right, yeah,
there's really no active farms.
I think that should stay.
Mm-hmm.
And, the one after it too, brewery, distillery also.
Okay?
Can I ask on that area? So we just talked about commercial areas.
Why wouldn't we
Those
want-
places going in there. Is it now allowed in a more commercial setting to have a brewery and a distillery in a?
Actually, I think a lot of the breweries are in industrial, commercial settings.
are.
They tend to
because
land in
they tend to land
underutilized
there.
space, yeah.
But they're not growing there, they just,
Right.
No, they're
bring
not-
their.
That's a different.
That's a
They're,
different,
they're many
Not
times
allowed
buying
in place.
everything, they're buying the hops and they're buying the,
right, all those,
It says on the property where ingredients are grown
right.
for
Right.
distillery.
But adding it to industrial. based
shouldn't we
on
have it
what
in
we talked
industrial?
about.
Certainly can.
Where somebody
I
could
mean, I
open
think
a
you could open
brewery
that
and
one up
not
a little
grow
wider.
or, yeah, right? Could happen.
What?
Somebody could open, like Powder House, how they.
Yeah, they're in
just-
an old factory setting.
Yeah, they're in an old,
And I think there's examples from other communities around the
Towns.
state where this is a manufacturing operation in a sense, so.
Well, it is, I mean,
Yeah.
we have
Yeah,
a
that's
friend
how a
who's-
lot of them get approved, it's just that manufacturing is allowed in the industrial zone, where manufacturing.
Or in a commercial zone.
Yeah,
So the
you
only
don't allow
commercial zone.
manufacturing in a commercial
commercial
zone.
zone.
No, but it's
I'm
not
saying-
manufacturing
But it's-
per
it's a
se,
restaurant.
they're-
It's
but
almost like a
they're-
restaurant.
It's like
You can't
grabbing a
touch.
bakery.
It's
I
like a bar.
No, what I'm suggesting is that you don't need to add it to an industrial zone, because it's already
Right.
probably permitted
I
as a
think-
manufacturing
Oh, okay.
use.
I would say we're
perhaps.
gonna add it to the table, just
Yeah.
because I think if it does, if it's not saying that,
Saying-
people are gonna say
then we
it's not
permit
permitted.
it, 'cause we.
So I agree with Carl's premise of the general language is
Right.
helpful,
Mhm.
but once you've added the specific, you can't sort of go back to the general. So I think we just on page 53, bottom right corner, change it from X to SUP and we're good to go.
Page 53, you said?
Page 53, because this is,
Oh, yeah, now you're in the industrial section.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, that's fine, I would.
okay.
On that still, tasting room, where is that defined?
It's not. So if it's, Jill had mentioned the possibility of a restaurant, and yes, you're saying that a second. You can have a brewery, you can have an accessory tasting room, people will come in and buy growlers at a brewery and all the other stuff, that's fine, that's good, you can taste it before you decide to buy. But if you're gonna be running a restaurant there, or a bar, then the issue is that's a separate special
It
permit
is
for-
different.
Yes. So I think as long as it's accessory indoor tasting room, if it goes.
Tasting, again, what-
Didn't,
Right, where
There's a
people can go in and
limit
buy
number
like
too, it's so
flights
much an
to
ounce
taste the,
or whatever it is.
taste the
I
varieties.
don't know what the standard is.
Yeah, there is
but
a
it
limit.
seems to
It
me
changes.
that if somebody's consuming multiple, if you're selling
There's,
pictures.
in some cases, there's limits. I don't know what the rule is in Connecticut, but we have a friend whose son just opened a place in Rhode Island. He cannot legally sell any customer more than 3 beers.
And so I don't think we
Large,
need to
you know,
get
regular
that,
sized beers.
for Jen
It's
to try to
against the
track
law.
that down. You spend a lot of time in breweries, first
yeah.
of all, but.
Oh, shut up.
He cannot
It
sell
could-
you
Take one for the
3
team.
12-ounce beer, more than 3 12-ounce beers legally. He could sell you flights, which are little,
Right.
Right.
1
That would be
ounce or
fine.
2 ounce
Somebody's gonna come
things.
in to buy beer, that you give them a little flight, they can figure out, say, I'll take.
I like
Yeah.
this, and this, can I have some
So-
cans to fill my growler, whatever, I mean, that's
They're
how
on
they
their way.
work.
So I think we're trying to, again, be sort of friendly here, because this is a happening trend. and
Right.
Summers can get in on it, so.
And we could get tax revenue and everything else from it.
We also talked about, like,
So does-
farm to table, which we don't
Does
have in here,
tasting
right?
include food,
Do we have
or-
that in
No.
here? We talked
So
about
It's a,
farm to
it's
table.
a tasting room,
Yeah, I
it's
don't
not a
think
rest,
so.
it's not a
Yeah,
food tasting,
so-
it's
So as it
food.
is now, does it not
And I know
allow any
everybody,
food,
right,
including
Carl?
bread,
If,
to go with your wine?
It doesn't say you can do food, so no.
I would-
No, and the one over in Enfield, I guess they have a problem, because they were bringing in
They had
food trucks.
but they put
But they're
in,
okay now?
they approved food trucks in
Yeah.
Enfield, so now they can do that
No,
occasionally.
They
with
were-
another town that's doing the same thing.
Yeah.
They're gonna
We've done
allow
that
it.
in East Granby, they allow food, well, there's one vineyard, you can have food trucks, but, you know, there is, some of these food trucks are very popular.
And they bring
There's
the
one called
customers.
Cousins
Yeah.
Lobster.
Yes,
They have their own
Yeah.
website,
Yeah.
and See, they're smiling.
They've
right?
been on the Shark Tank, I
So-
saw.
There they were
Yeah.
on Shark Tank.
I love
Yeah.
that show.
You know, 300 or 400 people will show up on a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
When Cousin says they'll be at Glenn's house on Saturday or
Right.
Sunday.
They have a
will.
following.
But they
Now,
just
that's
put
a
the
mass
word out
gathering.
on
My
social media.
build you, Carl.
They
So-
generate their own traffic.
But
They
that's,
do. Yeah, so
well,
that's,
we did talk about farm tables, but we never put it in. Farm to table.
So I live in Simsbury, which has Rosedale Farm.
Mhm.
Rosedale Farm is
I'm
actually doing
familiar.
a fairly good job of this. As Carl says, they have a fairly large tent that goes up every year.
Mhm.
They've actually asked the town for permission to put a permanent,
Structure.
kitchen inside the tent, and they wanna actually run a bakery operation out of there too. So, the town is struggling with that a little bit, that the concept of farm to table and supporting the farm has now grown to, this is great, why can't we do this all the time? And that's not really, it's actually in the floodplain, so they've got issues with structures and all the other stuff, which is why they got permission to do the tent.
Tent sounds great.
So,
It does become an issue.
it
But
can be an issue, I
it's-
think.
It's the evolution of it.
So some towns.
I think that's the evolution of wineries. They become,
Well, I think it could be, Jill, as
people
long
like
as
to,
they.
I like to
it-
feed people when I'm plying them
you
with
don't live on
alcohol.
Nod Road, do you, Glenn?
No.
I think
You're not
that's
a-
what you
you're not a
just
safe
approved
Nod Roader,
for
are you?
Copper Hill Farm.
My daughter-in-law
Food
has
festival.
has
Right.
I
that.
have the
Yeah.
same thing, he has
told her,
farm.
what do you-
'Cause you know who we
He has
are.
a farm.
We don't have
We're
it
the
in our
devils.
regs. It's not in here.
But under festivals,
According to them,
jamborees,
we are.
whatever, I mean, it
Yeah.
could fit under,
It could fit in there.
you know.
I mean, I think we can find a place to
Now,
put it.
there
that
Yeah.
is,
works.
I know there is specifically one town, I can't tell you which one it is, that makes the operation take down the tent every time there's no event, so you don't have that issue.
Yeah, so it doesn't look like a event center when there's.
Like, it's just
going
like
on.
an open space, so,
Right.
you know, most of these things are controlled by parking, so that the fewer spaces you have, if you can control it, you know, you've got farms, you know, I've got acres and acres of open space I can park anywhere, so you have to control the parking and I guess the seating is the other issue, and then it won't morph into something you don't want it to be.
So I did some work for another community, Easton, which is down next to Bridgeport, Fairfield, and
Westport.
everything else. So they are a very agricultural community. We carved out 4 sections in the regulations. So one is minor non-agricultural uses. This includes things open to the public, hay rides, corn mazes, festivals, and other similar activities, low level of activity. So if it's 30 days or fewer per calendar year, no zoning permit. If it's more than that, you need a zoning permit from staff, but never a special permit. These are, again,
Right.
hay rides, they're seasonal and
Right,
so
corn
on.
maze, hay
And
rides.
some other types of standards here. Major non-agricultural uses. This includes retreats, weddings, workshops, education, training, and classes. So now you've amped it up a
We
little
got
bit.
team building experiences or whatever you wanna call
Yeah,
them.
and we could, you know, shovel manure like as a team and
Right.
stuff, no. But I think the idea here,
No,
again.
that's what you were talking about before.
This is now, you're starting to get into careful territory, and we could add farm-to-table dinners and stuff like that. So if you do 1 event per year, 1 or 2, no zoning permits required. 3 or 4, zoning permit with staff. 5 or more is a special permit from the commission, because now you're getting into
Regular
farm-to-table
recurring
dinners every weekend, and hang on a second here.
Is there like a number of people involved too?
No.
Like,
No, you would, as a
But if it
special
was
use
a-
permit.
you
Well, if
could
the space
say-
only holds so many people, that's how
But they
big it
can
could
only
be.
park
You
so
have a
many cars.
large wedding, right?
Right.
Somebody's famous is gonna get married on a horse farm in Summers, and they're gonna put up a big tent, they're gonna have 1,000 people. I mean, you don't regulate that today, or maybe you would try, but by the time you figure it
wouldn't.
out.
goes so fast,
it's
yeah.
gone.
Mass gathering ordinance.
So
Yeah.
this
For a
is related
wedding?
to this.
If you've got 1,000 people coming, yeah.
Yeah, that's a mass gathering.
I
right?
understand, but the issue is if they don't apply for it beforehand, the tent goes up and the event's
Well,
over
right.
before you know it.
Right. It's up on Friday,
So
down on
the
Sunday.
question is
So
the
we find
recurring activity and the effect
Right,
that
if it
that
happens
has.
every other week, then
And
it's
the
a
other
whole
column
different
over
story.
here is if there's ever amplified sound outdoors, special permit. So that's a strong deterrent, if you will, to that like type of activity. Number 3 is their farm, brewery, winery, distillery operations, kind of similar to what you guys have done. And then the 4th is what they call agricultural processing, and they actually have people who are taking wood products and, you know, coloring the mulch, bark mulch and other, so it's a kind of an industrial agricultural activity. So, I mean, there's ways to carve stuff in here in terms of farm-to-table dinners, but it can also be a little bit of a Pandora's box.
Mhm.
And if you
It
want,
all is.
we could throw it under the temporary special
Everything
event.
we've done like that has been, in
Well,
a
you were
way.
saying it could come under, festivals,
Well, we have
gatherings, where is that?
Temporary events.
Temporary, what is that?
I think it's, I guess I could look at the table of contents, that'd make it easy, wouldn't it? 6.3, page 100. You got it?
Special events for nonprofits.
Sure.
For commercial.
So they got food festivals. so
101.
Page 101.
Page one.
So we could
Right,
add
food
farm-to-table
festivals, music
dinners.
jamborees, and
Yep.
flea markets. I mean,
If you can work it in there, I think that's where it
Yeah,
fits the best.
that's where it goes.
So Carl, is
I don't
there-
know if it does though, because it's an adjunct to a permanent use.
Special events for,
So the challenge that, it's funny what's happening with special use permits. Many communities were in favor of doing everything through special use permit because the commission had discretion. And these are starting to pull back because special permits get filed in the land records and they exist in perpetuity. So
Mhm.
you walk a delicate line, and they've clearly said on sand and gravel, dirt, earth excavation, you can limit the time period. So the question is whether or not the special use permit authorizes you for 1 year.
Well, you
we
could
could
make
limit the
that,
number of events.
I mean, we had a permitting process in the
We're
past.
on the cutting edge here, so I'm gonna defer to Carl.
We had a permitting process in the past, which every year the applicant came in and we sat down and discussed the prior year activities and that there were no issues, that there were no complaints. And so after 4 or 5 years of doing that, we decided we would make it
5 years.
5 years. Once you've gone through the process and you've proven that it's not as controversial use as it looked.
But you're saying that,
Special
expiration
permit
is not
gets filed
valid.
on the land record.
So it's not,
Well-
you can't put a 5-year limit on it? 'Cause that's what we.
Depends on the type of use. Generally
Festival.
speaking, I would say no.
Well, this is in the
I think
case.
generally speaking, I would say no, but that doesn't, each one has to be taken on its own, so,
I was just curious, because it's filed on the land records and it says
5
it's
years.
5 years from whatever that expiration date is.
Yeah.
So basically, you still would have them come back.
That's what the regulations provide, yes.
Well, and they do.
I understand.
So Carl, do you have the regs?
I'm sorry, don't. So what are we looking at?
Page 101, number 5, says,
Special events for commercial operations.
yep, D5 says, valid for 1 year. And I think as Carl indicates, that you can.
Up to 5 years.
You can renew. And the commission can say, everything went smooth, you
So
guys
that's
did a
okay.
great job. Well,
Well, we get feedback
Yeah.
from whoever. I mean, for a period of time, there was issues.
Right. But it does say in here for extended up to 5 years.
Right.
I think the
Provided
thing we
that.
can do here, Carl, we'll put
I gotta say, I have a little problem with that, so it's either 1 year or 5 years. What you're saying is that I'm gonna give you the first year, and then you're gonna come back, and I'm gonna tell you that.
In this particular case, it was more than the first year.
Yeah,
I understand
he
that.
came in
When
year
you-
after year after year.
We don't do zoning because of one issue or one property. I mean, the property owner could sell next year to somebody else, and
So my question to you, Carl, is can we rewrite this to say that the granting of a special use permit by the commission gives you the ability to apply for a conditional permit in subsequent years?
Mhm.
That, in other words, we have pre-approved your property for kind of a large event, but whether or not you get to run it each year is.
Yeah, I don't have a
you-
problem for this type of use to have some kind of term on it. I don't have a problem with that.
You
Okay.
can state either one.
But the idea of like, the first year, you get 1 year, and then the second year, you get 5.
No.
We didn't do that.
No, it was 1
I'm
year,
not-
one, okay.
That's what this says. I don't care about what you
Okay.
did for one particular property owner. I don't care about that. What it says is that the special permit is valid for 1 year, except if the operator comes in and says, well, I want 5 years, you can do that. Well, either it's 1 year or it's 5 years.
He can come in and say 5 years, and we could say no.
Should it say
Come
of the
back next
discretion
year.
of the
I mean,
commission? Because it doesn't, it says.
I understand where you're
upon-
going with it, Carl.
Yeah,
I'm just telling you, you can do what you want. Whatever you write in here, I'm gonna defend if it comes to it, but my preference would be that you stick with one term. So if it's a series of one-year permits, and what Glenn is suggesting, that maybe after the first year, you do some kind of perfunctory, maybe, staff gets to do it. I don't really care, but, because if you've got, let's say you've got 20 of these things, and everyone gets 1 year, and you come in and ask for 5, and you ask for 5, and you ask for 5, and I say, yeah, you get 3, no, you only get 2, yeah, you can have 5. To me, that's not uniform, and...
Unless it's based on
you know.
behavior. There's no standards in place. I think the challenge is if you have two operators, one of which does a great job. and the
But
other-
how would you, so if, let's take behavior. So if we've had
She
12...
walked through the door and asked, if she walks through the door and asks us for a permit that we had ordinarily done that to,
Yeah,
and says, I wanna go in right from the start, 5 years, we'd say no. 1 year.
understood. Right. But if two or more, again, you're using this and you're looking at a particular operation now. I don't care about that. Forget about that. It doesn't exist.
Right, no, I
Just from
get
in
it.
terms of uniformity, you're treating everyone the same. What would be the basis for you giving her an extension of 3 years and you 4 and you know, somebody else 5?
Somebody who nails all of the things that are important, and somebody who totally blows it, and you get a conditional extension, but you gotta fix, you're not gonna get any more extensions after this if you don't fix your traffic problem, or your parking problem, or something else.
Noise.
But this
Right.
doesn't say
Or
extension. I mean, the
if people,
history-
every time
yeah.
you do something, ring the phone off to her complaining about your
Okay,
use.
They
let's
reviewed
take
it
that.
a year
So,
and 3 years.
I happen to have one neighbor who's irrational, who calls every day.
Right.
And you got the, now I,
Too
so
bad for
she
you.
reports to you,
Too bad
we've
for
had
you.
45 complaints,
Yep,
all right?
and we'll
one
see you next
Where the
year,
other guy
sir.
has had only one complaint.
We'll see you next year, sir.
It's
And
really
so
the
you're gonna
same-
make that, you see what I'm saying? It gets very difficult. You're gonna have to take all these subjective standards and put them into this decision. I don't think it's appropriate. So I would say, if you wanna go 5 years, fine.
I
Or
think
to say-
basically what we were trying to do was account for the fact that in the past, we had done that,
Uh-huh,
Mhm.
okay?
yeah. So if you wanna go, the first permit is good for a year, the second permit is good for 2, and the whatever, but then everybody gets treated the same.
Right.
If you have problems, they're fixed during the renewal process, and you say, you got a problem with your parking, all right? If you don't fix it, next
But if
time,
you
you're gonna
came
get
back,
0
if you
years.
came back, if there was a schedule of approval,
Mhm.
first time around you get a year, second time around you get 2.
Whatever it is.
When you came around the second time, if there had been a lot of problems with the first time, why would we wanna give you
But I
2?
understand, but this says up to, in other words, I can
Yeah, no, I
decide,
think-
you get 2 years, but you get 3 and you get 5.
So what
That's
I-
the problem with the way it's written.
I understand. What I'd like to do is add in at the, extend the validity and add in the phrase, at the conclusion of the first year, provided that. So in other words, a special permit gets you the ability to do your first year.
Mhm.
Right.
You can, at the end of the first year of operation, in other words, you're not gonna get more than, nobody's getting more than a year at the get-go. Everybody gets 1 year.
Yeah, no problem
Show
with
us the color of your operation, and then you follow the standards, outlined here in A, B, C, and D, and you can get an extension.
that.
And
Mhm.
any of those extensions can be for 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 years at a pop, based on the way that they do it.
Yes.
So the only way to restart the clock and not
To me,
do
it sounds
5
like
years
different
on
words
the
that say
second
the
year
same thing, but that's
is-
okay, I
No.
guess.
Let's say there's some kind of problem, is we would have to deny it altogether and let them restart the clock.
I think if somebody's, I mean, you have a fair here, or a carnival or whatever, right? That they've done this year after year after year, they got
Yeah,
it.
Fort
they
Town
got
Fair,
it
Fort
down.
Town. They own their own
You
property,
don't have
though.
to see them every year, and
Yeah.
No.
It's not the Fort Town Fair, it's other
No.
stuff.
I understood. Okay.
I just don't want there to be any subjective discretion in the process.
Right.
Yep.
But didn't you say earlier that any special use permit runs with the property?
But what I'm saying that this
Unless
is a
it's-
carve-out, this
Unless,
is an exception.
okay, because we're putting a
This is
timeline.
a special use permit.
Extra special.
Extra
Extra
special.
It's like we were gonna make it like olive oil, right?
Yeah, that's it.
The first press. Mm.
Okay. I think the next comment that I had was back on page 31. We
I know,
traveled a
this is
little
mine
afield
now.
What was
here.
it about?
31 was one about religious institutions.
Yeah.
So I think places of worship, I mean, religious, I don't think
And that's
adding-
relative to what's going on currently.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I don't think you need to add.
No, I don't think we need to
So
change
just leave it as
it. I
places
think
of
it was,
worship?
I think the person who raised the question was really looking for clearing up a question that they had.
See, place of worship, to me, religious institution as an umbrella could cover
Could
a
be
wide range of
anything.
activity. Place of worship is what we would all sort of call a church, a synagogue, a
Right.
mosque.
Okay.
So the issue as a religious institution could include,
Well, it could be a
building a
convent.
new
Could be a-
university in
could be a-
Florida.
Could be a seminary, could be a convent,
I mean,
could
this
be.
says a place of worship open to the public, so this would be something anybody can go in, open to the
And New
public.
Milford had a case where they tried to do that, it was a church at the end of a cul-de-sac.
I mean, you can charge.
We had one in
people in?
Summers, there was a church in Summers on private property, it was a family
Oh.
church.
Yeah.
And they were okay, fine with it until they started holding events there, and then the town stepped in and said, it's not a church, now it's a
Okay.
business.
So we're gonna leave it as place of worship, excuse me, and I don't think that phrase needs, there's other sources of definition that we could find.
Right,
to
and the
evaluate.
situation that exists is gonna exist under the old regulations
Exactly.
anyway.
Anyways, right, the current,
The prompting of those questions.
Yeah, there was a, I almost raised my hand and
Yeah,
said,
we don't need to
really
go
can't
there.
discuss that.
We don't need to go there.
Okay. I think I'm jumping now to page 149 and 150.
What was that?
This is the issue of the blasting. So my notice is, page, 53.
So I have a general issue, and I think, Glenn, you're probably more in tune with this than I am. So I understand clearly the concept of removal,
Right.
all right? I dig a hole, I take out what's there, I put it on a truck,
Take it away.
and I take it away. That has special concerns because we've now got triaxle trucks driving up and down roads and so on and so forth. But is there a difference between that activity and digging a hole in my yard and moving 10,000 cubic yards of material and spreading it out over the site? Is that still the same activity except for the fact that the trucks are not coming in and out?
If your concern is the level of traffic from six-wheel trucks or six-axle trucks and stuff?
Because
yeah, it's the same.
the activity itself that goes on the property is no different in either case, right?
Correct.
So, again, I don't know, I just bring that to your attention. If your intention is to regulate these activities because of the off-site conditions that are created, as opposed to the on-site conditions, the noise of the whatever, the...
Here again, we really can't get into the
Grinders,
grits of this one
No,
because it's...
no.
But I mean, there are other considerations, really.
So I guess my question for Glenn is, if I have, let's say even if I had 1,000 cubic yard, and I do have in some cases, all right, can I dig a 3,000 cubic yard hole? Or let's take the other, I have a 3,000 square foot or cubic yard mound on my property that I'd like to level. Can I just level that
Are you
and
gonna
spread that
take
out?
any dirt off-site?
If I'm not taking it off-site?
Isn't that what filling is?
I
Like
think-
you're filling a hole, you're
I mean,
filling in an area with
if you're gonna,
3,000
if you're
I
gonna
know.
take a piece of property that prior to your activity was not suitable for development, because it had slopes greater than
hillside
25% or whatever, or you're not gonna comply with getting accurate establishments of wetlands, et cetera, you just wanna move stuff around and fill in what you wanna do, I'm not in favor of that.
So the challenge, I think, in this situation is what rights come with private property, right? So zoning is set up to protect the public health, the public safety, the public welfare. So I'm gonna pick on Dan here for a second. Dan on weekends likes to drive a bulldozer, and at one weekend, even numbered weekends, he makes a pile, and the next weekend he flattens it out, and then he does it again. Should Dan have a right to do that on his property? Yes, he should. I mean,
Right.
Paige could do it too. I mean, anybody could. But the issue is, if it doesn't affect the neighbors, okay, now, it's
Define that.
noise, I understand, but the issue is that we need a noise ordinance. So, the operation removal of dirt is where most communities get involved with the regulations and say, okay, listen, people are gonna build houses, they're going to bring in dirt or fill around the house, we're gonna give them a reasonable, we can approve a subdivision, it's one of the exemptions under the earth removal situation, you get approval for subdivision, which could be a big road and grading and thousands of cubic yards.
Right.
And the issue is we say it's okay, because we approved that development, that we know what's going on here. So the question in a sense is, where do we draw that line, and then also how do we enforce it? And the issue is, unless you got laser measurements or LiDAR or drones and due process and adequate notice.
So I only bring up the issue because I think you need to clearly understand what it is you're regulating, what you're not regulating. So it's not, it should be clear one way or the other. If we're talking about the removal of this material, and you're fine with that, then that's what you should regulate. If you're trying to regulate something other than that, then we need to know that, because that could be a problem. For guys like Dan.
In the
Did you see this from the EP?
In the case of blasting,
And that settles the whole
in the case of
thing.
blasting, I think we
This
need.
is blasting only, we're not talking about.
Right, Carl, but I wanna say, in the case of blasting, I think we need a separate regulation that doesn't relate to filling and removal.
Right, just blasting, because that alone.
Well, then, if that's your intent, I think, is it carved out here separately
No,
already?
it's in
so-
part of this, so it needs to be dragged
Yeah.
out separate.
So,
Carl, do you feel that the commission can regulate blasting? I'm gonna pick it on Dan, we're gonna pick on Paige this time. Paige wants to blow stuff
I don't
up
know.
this weekend.
I mean, we
Yeah.
need to know that.
She's not taking anything off her property, just wants to blow
We're
it
not
up.
asking for
blast
something that we
anything,
can't
right?
legally
Blast.
do, we're
I
wondering.
don't have an answer for you, because I don't, it's the
think-
first time I've been asked about blasting.
This is a very difficult topic. My understanding right now is that the ability to regulate blasting essentially rests with the fire marshal.
Right, I
And your
know.
ability to get involved in this is limited.
Well,
And I think the only area you can get involved is when you tie it to something like earth removal and say, you know what? If you're gonna be blasting as
that's
part of
the
earth
kind of answer we're looking for.
a commercial activity, the earth removal, you're selling that stuff or taking it off or whatever, then you know what? We need to talk to you.
So your question is, can we regulate blasting outside the fire marshal's jurisdiction when there's no removal? That's what you wanna know. And
yes.
Glenn's saying he doesn't think he can, and I'm saying I don't know,
And we don't know.
but I'll find out.
And,
Aside from, let's say, a noise ordinance or something.
well, yeah, I mean, that's
People are concerned about
different.
their wells and their
They're concerned about a
foundation.
lot of
There's
things.
lot
They're
of-
concerned about radon,
There's
they're concerned
liability
about their
associated
wells.
with the blaster.
Yeah, but then,
Yeah.
you know.
So we can't fix that. The question is whether or not, under
No, but
state
can we,
law,
can we
have to
create an
enforce it.
environment where it's not as much of a possibility that they have to worry about it?
I don't know, I think I'm gonna defer to Carl on this. I think it's either an ordinance or a carefully crafted zoning regulation.
Yeah.
So I think I posted this on the listserv, I'm trying to remember now.
Did you get responses?
I think the responses that came back,
I don't remember.
it would have been back in the spring sometime, but the issue.
You know, I
we
could
did
post
the
it on
archives.
camera and see what the lawyers around think
I
about
think
it.
if you can come up with something, I'm
Yeah,
all ears.
I don't know, I'm just,
mean,
I
we're
just
looking
don't
for
want,
help
what
and
I don't
guidance on
want
this.
is for, 6 months after these are approved, for someone to
big
say, that's
change.
not
No, and
what I
we don't
intended.
either. And we don't
Right,
either.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I just wanna bring up these issues.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think you're right.
Yeah.
The issue isn't of earth removal and filling so much as
Blasting.
people wanna
Blasting.
blast in a neighborhood.
Mhm.
They just wanna
Or,
change the contour
cause
of
they
the
don't like
land.
they don't like the rocks sticking through the ground, that they,
Or they
you
want
know,
more
or
flat
whatever.
land.
Or they want more
for-
flat land. You know, I mean, if they came in and said they wanted a farm and they actually are creating an agricultural use, there's not a lot we can say.
But, some of the major earth, moving operations that may happen, unless we know about it and get involved, sometimes people don't realize that they're encroaching on wetland or some other area.
Sure.
And sometimes just the idea that, to notify the town or get a look at the property, from conservation or something, can actually prevent a problem that's unfixable later. Part of this also talks about, to preserve the cover crop on the land, to prevent erosion and all those things. So it talks here about topsoil and loam not being moved or covered up without some care being given, that it's moved carefully and then put back in and reseeded to create cover. So could we maybe put something about the amount of area that's being affected?
But the problem is, when we're talking about the amount of area, they have to get surveyors if they wanna level out part of their yard.
So we know what's gonna come
really
into
hard to
play,
enforce.
what's gonna be
It is
affected.
really hard to
I mean,
enforce.
Let's
And
see
if-
what Carl comes up with.
Right.
Yeah.
for example, the
I'm
site
patient.
council has preempted our ability to regulate telecommunications towers. We simply cannot.
Right.
My sense is under Connecticut law, our ability to regulate blasting has been preempted by the statutes which relate to the fire marshal.
Well, we don't
So
know.
the issue is, I don't know that we can do it, but I think if Carl asks the other municipal attorneys, they're gonna tell us that, yeah, you can, and if
Or
there is, then
you
let's go.
definitely can't.
Yes.
The state has taken it upon themselves to do it.
But
and
that
that's,
isn't,
Yeah.
that's relating to water
I wish that-
quality,
that's
et
why I was
cetera.
I was looking for the web link, I wanted to put that web link right
Did
in
you
the
try
reg.
searching the actual, a phrase from the document?
Yes, I did.
Because sometimes that works. If you take it,
I
just
don't know where it
take
came
the
from.
first
Look,
paragraph.
it's not.
blast. They'll give you the name, they'll give you the
I
number.
understand, but I think for us, from a regulatory perspective.
We gotta be able
gotta
to
know
quote
where
a
it came
an
So what
audit.
I wanted to do on page 150.
Yeah, where you said, like, go back and look at this, blah, blah,
Right.
web link, DEP guidelines not found, I see it, it's right here.
Right, so but if we
You
don't
wanted to
have
be able
it,
to say, go to
then as long as Jen has
ct.gov,
it,
blah, blah.
somebody would say, well,
Go here.
guidelines, and Jen would say, here you go, here they are.
Right.
In a perfect world, they would be in a third-party location,
Right.
and they would never move, and we
Right,
would rely
but-
on those for years to
But
come.
I
Now
mean,
you're talking
really,
about the
if you,
state.
if you call DEP and tell them you're looking for rules and regulations on blasting, they'll give it to you, you know, they'll send it to you. And this is, if this still is in going on now, and it's still good, this here, if you read that thing, you don't have to worry about anything with it.
We have a
It's called
person
right out.
on conservation
You
who
know?
works at DEP, who deals with water quality issues, et cetera.
I wish. I
He
could-
might be able to tell us specifically where we could find it.
If somebody has a web link, I think that's perfect for
Okay.
us, because then we get it, there's never any question, everybody gets to the
You know-
same thing,
Right,
we're all
and
working the same
that'll
piece of
sell
paper.
Do you know who
you know?
Drew is?
I've gotten an email from him.
Okay.
So, Jen, are you gonna check on that,
Yeah.
whether, yeah, thank you. So that was page 150. Page 149, I think what I was trying to describe here is that, page 149, 84B says the following activities are allowed with no permit required. And it says, removal or filling up to 1,000 cubic yards of earth material is permitted without obtaining additional approval. Only if such activity occurs in connection with one of the following. So it could be a bona fide construction operation, it could be the landscaping of the lot, it could be normal or all the other stuff.
I thought they had asked if we would take that out.
Take that out,
Without or with?
the 1,000
Allowed
cubic.
without, these are exceptions.
Mm-hmm.
Now you get to the next page, and then now you need a site plan approval for this and special use
Well,
permit
earth
for that.
removal and filling.
For up to
So-
1,000 cubic.
So, but blasting wouldn't pertain to this.
I think what I'd like to do is
It
add
should be
here,
clear.
Is
provided
that
that
what?
no blasting, add the language, provided that no blasting is required. So if no blasting is required,
Right.
and you fall under one of these 5 categories, you are good to go.
So they can.
Okay, that
protect
makes
that.
sense.
Okay, yeah. Good.
I don't think I had any
But
other,
I don't know why you would talk about something that's general landscaping stuff under earth removal and filling.
people use that phraseology to do all sorts of stuff.
Okay.
Gets
So,
them confused.
let's go back and revisit this again, because I'm just thinking about problems that have, so, normal agricultural operations.
Shouldn't need to blast, yeah.
I forget about blasting. but-
1,000 cubic yards is good. So the 1,000 cubic yards in the very first intro paragraph.
Okay, all right. And the same with the subdivision.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if I'm removing 10,000 cubic yards, I need a subdivision approval and a special permit for removal.
Yeah,
Okay, all right.
but if you're gonna reuse all that stuff on the property,
Well, that's
then
different,
no.
but, you know. Okay.
All right, so let's back up now, Carl.
I didn't know if you were
Back
looking
up to-
online, because I stole your regs.
Oh, no, I
Yeah.
mean, I could, but
Yeah.
I can kind of see that.
You're kind of memorized.
So it's quite possible
Not
that a
yet.
1,000 cubic, subdivision could require more than 1,000 cubic
Absolutely.
yards.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And I like the fact that it's limited to 1,000, because you know, I've seen many applications for subdivision approval, which are really, where there's no limitation, and it's not about getting the lots or building houses, it's more about getting the material
dirt.
off-site.
Right.
And the same with farms.
Because they don't want it in the way.
I think my point is this now. In the lead paragraph, we have this phraseology about 1,000 cubic yards.
Right.
And I think maybe what we're talking about doing is taking that phrase out of the lead paragraph and putting it in subparagraphs 1, 2, 3, and 4, but not 5. Because if I have a subdivision that's been approved by the planning commission, they got bonds and all the other stuff on file, and I have to move 12,000 cubic yards.
Move it or remove it.
But how could they could they say to the operator that you can only have trucks going in and out of there on Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, as a condition of a subdivision approval? I don't think it could. That's why I think it needs to stay here.
Number, 5.
So if somebody gets approval for a subdivision,
They
and
need to,
involves-
that involves more than 1,000 cubic yards, they need to come here and get a special permit
So
for
that's for the planning commission for a subdivision, and then they have to go to the
Yep,
zoning commission for.
I think,
as long as the record reflects this is our intent, because
Yes.
that's about 50 triaxles, right? About 20 cubic yards a truck.
roughly, that's 100 trips,
One,
right?
Jeff's input on that.
I agree. Does it sound okay, Jeff?
Yeah, sounds good. I think as far as measuring it, you would require an as-built plan like you do with the gravel pit.
Right.
Well, but when
At the
you,
time of renewal.
You mean for the subdivision?
right, well, you would be able to determine based upon proposed grades versus existing grades, how much material is being moved, you know,
Close
and
enough.
if it's over 1,000, I think they should come here and get, because, again, my concern is, I don't think the planning commission during a subdivision application has the right to place conditions on it that you would otherwise wanna see
No.
on
Right.
an excavation permit
Right.
Correct,
application.
zoning has their power.
Yeah, so I'd say leave it in the way it is.
Ladies and gentlemen, I don't have anything else. Do you want to just roll through the comments I heard at the hearing to make sure
Yeah.
that we've covered them all? Mr. Duffy talked about religious institution or place of worship, and we decided to leave that that language the way it is, and not add a definition. Nancy Rodriguez, how were the revisions marked between the different versions? And it turned out she was missing a version, and so I think she understood that. Mr. Hutton, Penny Road, how will changes to Sunny's Place be managed? And I do think we have this, we should probably talk about.
Well, he also wanted the expanded map for that zone.
Correct, and I think Jeff's gonna go ahead and take care of that.
Well, and so with that, just pause at Sonny's Place, Jonathan Murray had
Yeah,
emailed
so
a couple.
let me get through this list and then we'll go to that.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Well, yeah, he was just talking about the map.
Yep.
Janet
Yeah, Warnock?
Warnock, yeah.
What was the purpose and intent of the A2 zone?
Right.
I think there were no
I
changes.
think it covers
Yeah.
that.
Sought clarification. Mr. Pryor, Mountain Road, I believe?
Yep.
Where did the, time limit on a special permit go? And we said that had to go due to the change in state law. And he was not in favor of the winery brewery in a residential zone. We talked about that and decided to keep it.
Right.
Yep.
Mr. Williams, Springfield Road, Village District, who would be the Village District Consultant Design Review Board? And I think we answered
We do
that
have one.
question. And he requested there be a PDF of the zoning maps.
Online.
Be put online. So, I think you have the PDFs.
Yeah.
Yep.
Someone put on that board up now, so
Yeah.
PDF.
Yeah, they could just go tomorrow. Vicky Clark, Mountain Road, requesting that the blasting guidelines be, referenced, and I think, Jen's gonna check on the location for that, and we'll get that in here if we can find it. Tom Clark on Mountain Road, how does the blasting get enforced and regulated? And I think this becomes a little bit of the challenge between who's got jurisdiction, and Carl's gonna be looking at that. Jan Greger, Amy?
Jen.
I'm sorry. And this is, need to coordinate, I think this is, coordinate zoning with the fire marshal.
That's all of those people are in close confines with
Okay, I
the
wrote zoning, I think we're
blasting
talking
area.
blasting. Need to coordinate
Blasting.
blasting with the fire marshal, thank you. And then the last comment I had was Karen Murdock, in the hopes the commission promotes agriculture in the winery as allowed.
Which was the whole idea behind talking about including that.
And we decided to keep that. So those are my
Yeah.
comments from the public. I
Sure.
think that addresses this correspondence, which had to do with the
Winery.
farmer.
Oh,
winery.
okay, no, yep.
I did talk about, farm to table, but I think it's included under
Mhm.
temporary special events, so that brings us now down to the correspondence on Sunday's Place. Did you get a copy of that, Carl?
I did.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So the first question, I think here, will the facility at 349?
Be grandfather.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Will it be grandfather?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I think there's an the word that's being used here is facility. And I believe, my interpretation, Carl, would be that the facility is the building and rides and other things that are out there.
Yeah.
If they're in there and they've been approved, they would be grandfathered, they're pre-existing, non-conforming. I don't think that you can require their removal, et cetera. They're there,
No, but
they've been
they're
approved by
talking
special
about the
permit.
uses as opposed to the structures, though.
But the third word in the sentence is will the facility.
Will
And
the
I think it's,
facility.
my sense is yes.
And the last word he uses is uses.
Yeah, and I think they're two separate issues.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we were
Pre-existing
agreeing.
non-conforming uses.
So I think the facility is grandfathered.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree with that, Carl?
Oh, absolutely.
Anything that's on the ground,
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, for the things that
Wrong
were approved.
correct.
So if there's something out there that hasn't been approved, he doesn't get a freebie on this.
Right,
In other
and I
words,
don't-
it has been approved.
yeah.
If it's done illegally, then that's a whole different issue.
Would the current uses, agricultural, residential, be grandfathered until a change is proposed to be considered?
All right, so hang on a
pre-existing?
second. You're in the paragraph here. Go to paragraph 2 now. Would the commission consider expanding
Well,
the
let's go
CR?
back to paragraph 1. So,
Structures, yes, uses, not maybe,
in
not
other words,
necessarily.
the fact that they have live music out there, that's not grandfathered to me, those are,
It's not.
that's what's being regulated under, so, again, I don't know if someone's gonna respond, you don't have to respond, I mean, just
I
so
don't think-
it's clear, is
I
anybody
think
that
we should
thinks
respond.
that, just because they have bands out there 3 nights a week, that's gonna continue for the rest of their, no, right? The intent of the regulation is to regulate that activity.
Correct.
It
Yes.
is, and he was questioning, how will it be implemented, how will,
He'll come in for a special permit under the regulations, and he'll,
so if these get adopted, when he doesn't have an expiration on his special use permit, so when does he come in?
Did he
Well,
get
what
a
does
special
the-
use permit for concerts?
The date, like first of the year? Or-
no, so,
They came in,
I guess you'd have to look at, can someone put together
they
all
were
the special
approved to
permits?
have, they were approved to build a stage. I do not believe we have ever had a discussion on performances.
Mhm.
We have,
In a meeting?
yeah.
Yeah, we've talked about music.
Yeah.
And they
talk
built
about
a
what they're
stage.
doing, what
They
they're
built
having there.
a little stage with a covered
Understand, but,
stage.
in other words, well, I guess, we need to see all of the permits, so are they all in one place, or?
Mhm.
Okay, so let's look
I have
at
a
those.
folder just for that.
I think you shared those with me probably
Yep.
6 or 7
Okay.
months ago.
I have it in PDF.
Okay,
Right, so his question is, once this
Once it gets
gets
reclassified, what
enacted,
happens?
if it's enacted, and this is now the new zone, what's the
Going forward, what
cutoff
do you
point,
mean?
and what going forward, like, when do we require the master plan, like, does.
If I was him, I would think that the operative thing to do is that winter is the slow time.
Yep,
Winter would be the time that they'd get their act together, come see the commission, and get everything geared up, ready to go, so that when 2020 hits, he's rolling.
correct. Well,
And everything, it's the similar thing we talked about on the other activities. As long as he's doing a good job, the renewal of that the permit for the following year is an easy one, right?
Well, they don't get a renewal,
They don't get a renewal, they
No.
don't.
but on the
have-
activities,
but on
they're
the
going to.
activities,
Going
they're,
forward, they're
I
gonna need
mean,
one.
you
So
could,
we've split, under the commercial recreation, we split the facilities from the activities.
Okay.
Right.
The facilities, he wants to add a new ride, activity, pavilion, anything else like that, he comes to see you and he gets a special use permit for it. The structure or facility or activity that's going on. But he wants to do more concerts or do more things, you gotta tell us what you're doing, get it on here and the commission will approve it. And if he wants to renew that every year and the commission is comfortable with it, he can do so. If they wanna go to a concert every night of the year, time out, that wasn't anticipated, you gotta come and see us.
There was
about that.
never a meeting in zoning where they came in and specifically asked for permits, use, to hold concerts.
Okay.
They got permission to put up a pavilion, and before that, tents.
mhm. And they had safe grad nights, they came in for that, they did come in for that.
No, I think
But
we-
the music was
The music
for entertaining their
happened.
people.
I think they still maintain that stance, that it's music, and they're not a concert, they're not.
And they're
that-
not
Well, I know they
charging-
are
they're
because
not
they don't
charging
charge you to go,
tickets.
but they don't give,
It's-
you're not,
it's
everything
free.
is.
Amplified music is what we're talking about, I don't care if you charge
It
or
is.
don't charge.
It
but-
is.
But, but that's what the regulation provides going forward, that they'll have to.
Right, and they
Mhm.
weren't given permission in any of their special use permits to do it.
There's time frame, so that's giving them permission. I don't have the folder with me, I mean, but I could bring it for next. there's approvals that say, you know, no music after 11 o'clock.
Yeah,
So
I
if it
remember that,
specifically
yeah.
says no music after 11 o'clock, that's giving them
Letting them
permission
to have
use
music
Do you
before.
recall ever, I mean, as long as we're on this particular one, talking about parking to the left of the property?
No,
No. No. None of the site plans have that.
no, I mean, there are a number of
That
things
would be part
that,
of the event activity
Right.
that we should be talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in the early adjustment period,
Mm-hmm.
there's gonna be some delicate
oh,
discussion.
especially in the case of this, yes.
But I think, my sense is that I think this format provides an opportunity to find a happy meeting ground as to how many activities, the hours, the extent,
Right.
et cetera, and move ahead.
Do we need it written in the regulation, in
Yep.
that zone, like that, any such activities like music or whatever, you know, as of the date of adoption must cease until they get something like that, some wording like that?
I wouldn't go there.
No?
And the reason is that zoning really provides some measure of protection for pre-existing nonconformities. Now, the question is, does it bless all previous activities and
Well, that's
issues?
his question.
That's basically what he's
I
asking
would
here.
not answer that question. He's clearly
So
asking
how
a
do we
question, he wants to protect
enforce-
everything that he's been
Right.
doing in the past, and I don't think he's entitled to that
Right.
protection.
That's what I'm saying, is
So I think the facilities are fine, the uses are gonna be subject to an annual special event program.
So we'll be looking for a official opinion on that from our town attorney.
Tell him to get his
Going to
opinion.
drag him in.
Tell him
No,
to get his
that-
own opinion.
You're.
We're not gonna write an opinion for him, Jim.
Yeah,
He's gotta
the
No,
figure
I
it out
don't
on
know,
his
I
own.
mean, just enforcing, how do I get him in here, does he have to apply for a new?
You'll have to issue a
special
cease and
use
desist. If he continues these activities after these regulations are
adoption.
adopted,
Okay,
okay, it'll be subject to an issuance of a cease and desist, because
So
he
that's- I
won't have a
can-
permit for them.
right.
And we don't wanna
Subject
go
to-
there. Because we can get the
Well, he's
zoning
asking a
citations at
question.
$150 a day. We don't really wanna do that, I'm sure he or she doesn't.
No,
want-
I think it's a legit question as a business owner, though, I would expect if I'm asking a question,
You're
for
changing
it
the
to be
zone,
answered.
yeah.
When do I, what do I need to come back for, and what can I keep doing?
Yeah.
Read the regulations as to what you can keep doing, and then when would be the next time you wanna hold one of these activities, prior to that.
Mhm.
Just.
But these are loaded questions, and
They are.
I
they
have
could.
to
Every
share
single
with
one of
you
them.
what they've approved, and then.
Yeah,
we can
let's do
discuss.
that, let's
Yeah.
do that, cause we're talking in a vacuum, so.
Right,
But I think my sense in what I was trying to create here was a situation that regardless of everything that they may have ever done in the past, they
Oh,
may
yeah, I know.
have done something 15 years ago, they had the Rolling Stones there, and that doesn't give them the right going forward.
Whatever.
I'm just looking for a deadline, you know, say
Understood,
we
and I
adopt
think what I'm
these
trying to get to
January
is sort of an
15th.
annual management plan.
Correct.
So I
Yep.
think that, I think the regs set up the framework, but I think the tactical issues about responding to these is probably a delicate issue for you and Carl to
Yeah.
work on. I'm happy to help if I can, but I
Mhm.
think this.
Right, you call up and say, hey, so-and-so, you know, we got the new regs, and when you coming in?
Yeah, or you can send them a copy of it and let them examine it, you know?
Yeah.
Well, they've already done that, that's what he said, the
Right.
questions.
No, but if we go forward with it and do it, you know?
So, in the first paragraph, I think the facilities grandfathered, the activities or
Mhm.
uses, I think, no, that's gonna be subject to the new provisions. Second paragraph, would the commission consider expanding the CR zone to 2 adjacent parcels? I would suggest you not do that. My suggestion would be if he wants to extend the CR zone, he should apply for it. And that actually just raises the ante, if you will, about getting the permits and the event plan together. So, I don't think we wanna be staunch opposition here, but what we wanna figure out a way to manage this.
No, we've got a
effectively.
special use permit for one particular piece of property, that's definitely a loaded question there.
Yep, but I think the bottom line is that he should apply as applicant. That would be my recommendation to you. So the table of uses appears to restrict some of the operations that are currently approved at the facility. And again, if they're,
i.e. outdoor
they're
seating,
using the word
restaurants,
operations here, which
nonprofit.
I'm not a big fan of. I think if he's got an outdoor seating, he's got restaurants, he's got nonprofit events, I think the physical features, if they were approved by the commission, are grandfathered,
You mean the buildings?
the buildings.
Yeah.
So that would cover a restaurant, I believe. Okay.
Well, they
Outdoor
specifically came in
seating.
and asked for a restaurant. They had specifically come in and asked for a special use permit to open a restaurant, and we granted it.
Yeah, that was one of the first things.
One of the first things they did.
Yep.
So the nonprofit events now gets into the event plan.
I have no idea what those are.
And if
at
the
this
outdoor
point.
seating is for a concert, then hang on a second.
It's not, it's for their restaurant.
Then if and it was approved by the commission, I think yes, that.
And we did approve a snack bar.
We have, well, there's a restaurant there.
But no, I know there is, but perhaps when we looked at it, there was, you know, certain layout that this is the snack bar area. It's morphed into perhaps a bigger area. We should look at exactly what we approved. I wouldn't say that over and
I agree.
over and above, we approved restaurants.
There's been
I'm
some
not sure about
evolution that went on.
Yeah.
And then we did for a nonprofit, we gave them the right to do that with the, high school kids and stuff, you know, just as long as.
I don't know that that's being run as a nonprofit, but,
But just, let us know. They were supposed to let us know how many of those events they were supposed to have.
They did.
Right.
they were supposed to come back after the first year and apply again.
We already had that, this year.
But I think, you know, does that mean that we approved all nonprofit events?
No,
No, so, I don't think so.
the only nonprofit event that stands up to me is the Chili Festival.
So I think the next to the last paragraph is again part of this event plan. And the very last plan is, does the CR zone need to be added as approved zone for the sale of alcoholic beverages? And I don't think there's anything in here. that says-
We have no say over the regulation of the sales of alcoholic beverages.
Well, we do have a provision on
I
alcoholic.
understand, but we have no say over whether they get approved or not.
Yeah, and I think the question is, if he got approval in the past for the sale of alcoholic beverages at the
We're
facility.
not changing
then-
that.
I agree, we're not. That's,
They have a bar there.
yeah, I understand.
They have permission from
So
the
if that's-
the Beverage
If that was
Commission.
approved by the commission, then his grandfather, he's could do it. If he wants
Right.
another separate
He wants
facility
to set
with
up
a bar,
another,
restaurant,
another
he-
bar, that's a whole different
facility,
story.
and now you would approve that.
But he got
special
approval
permit.
here for that as well,
For,
to have the sale of alcoholic beverages.
yeah, but we didn't grant him the license to sell.
I understand,
The state-
that's, yeah, but I understand the licensing, I'm saying, but
He's asking if it's allowed and permitted in that zone, is what he's saying. Do we need to list that it's
I mean, it's
permitted in
a-
that?
They
was
came to us and
residential
asked if they
zone.
could apply for alcohol.
right, but under your, so what I read that to mean, I understand that, but where are the alcohol regulations?
Sections.
They're in 3, right?
6.5, page 103. Special use permit, restaurant, retail sale, on-premises consumption, grocery, bottling, storage, or residential districts. So,
Where are you reading?
uh,
Oh, the whole, you read the list,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
so here.
So if they have a restaurant there, then they can ask for the sale of alcohol.
Or
Right.
on-premises
It doesn't need to
consumption.
be, because it's not limited to, any zone, right?
I think there's actually more limitations in a residential district, so the fact that he's gone from a residential district to a CR,
Yeah,
he's no longer subject to subparagraph 6 there.
which are the setbacks, right, basically, and they,
So he can apply for it, and the commission will review it.
Well, he's
and approve it as a
specifically
special
listed in B, 6B though,
Mhm.
as a public golf course or golf center.
But it was in a residential district, it's not anymore.
Right, it
Oh,
won't be,
okay.
right?
Right now, it's in its own district.
So he's not subject to the limitation about distance from a church or
Yeah.
right,
school
so
or-
he would be able to the extent that a restaurant is allowed, he would be able to get a permit under 1,
Correct.
all right? Because restaurants are allowed in the,
Residential district?
in the commercial, no, the commercial
Commercial.
and recreational.
Yeah.
Well, is it allowed as a use, or is it, that's a non-conforming use now in that district?
I would argue that he's got permission already from the commission for
He's got it,
alcohol
right.
sale. If he wants to add more,
He's gotta come back.
So
I think, Janet,
my
you have a
question is, as to a restaurant, is a restaurant permitted in the, what are we calling this, commercial recreational zone?
it's whatever, that's section 4 page 60.
Page 60?
So it doesn't. Now, let's think, no, I misspoke here. So, I'm looking at back on page 54, Carl.
I'm there, yep.
So, commercial recreation facility is allowed by special use permit, golf center, commercial recreational events. So, could you open a separate restaurant? I would say, no, you cannot. Can you open a restaurant as part of a commercial recreation facility? Yes, you can.
Well, it is part of it.
I agree. But the question is the interpretation.
Let's say he wants to open a second area where he serves food and alcohol.
I think there already is one.
Within the same property?
I think there already is one. There's a restaurant
back,
up front and there's food prepared in the back.
A third one. I'm trying to get to the heart of the question.
It's not my question.
No, that's my response. The issue is, if he was choosing to subdivide off a separate parcel or create a land lease situation or anything else, if it's not part of the commercial recreation facility, you cannot do a restaurant there.
Right.
It has to be part and parcel of.
I understand, but I guess I'm not making myself clear. He's got a restaurant now, right? Two. Those are permitted by what? A special permit?
Special use permit.
Okay, now we're changing the zone,
Right.
okay? Those were permitted as accessory uses to the golf center regulation. We are now creating its own zone. If I want to add a third restaurant, can I do that?
I think it was.
The answer is probably no, because I don't see it.
Yes.
You think it is, yes?
Yes, because as you said in your initial remarks, it's accessory to the golf center.
Okay.
But I think you
But
would
there
have to
went-
come back to us.
I
No,
agree
there's
with
still
you
gonna
there.
be
Golf
a
center's
golf,
still
there's
gonna
still
be
gonna-
in the language for this?
It's right there.
It still
On page
exists as a
54,
golf
item
center.
D2 on page 54. So we're trying to carve out how he got to where he is today, given the permits and stuff that Jen had. So if he wanted to subdivide a parcel or change the zone on an adjacent parcel and then try to put a Wendy's there,
I think what Carl's talking about, say over on the other end of the go
Right.
karts, he wants to build a little building and serve
Snack
food from
shack,
it.
whatever.
yes,
Yeah,
I would
Yeah.
say yes, he can apply for it.
But he could apply for it. Can't just
And
build it.
I think the standards under 4C for the,
So then once he has an additional restaurant, he can ask for an additional area to serve alcohol.
We don't regulate that.
You do regulate it.
you do, Carl,
You don't
not
regulate
license.
the license, I'm not talking about the
His ability to
licensing.
get a
So we
license
say
is-
yes, and then they go get a license.
When I come
We
in and I
gave
say I
them-
want a restaurant, that's one permit. A restaurant with
We
the
gave
right
them,
to sell,
we gave
to
them
sell
permission,
alcohol.
we gave
That's
them
different.
permission to sell alcohol outside
Yeah.
in the
Pavilion area.
pavilion area,
Right.
okay? They have a second bar in the carousel. We never talked about that,
Well, then
ever.
I don't think it's in the carousel.
It's in the it's called the Carousel Bar.
It's not the,
There
in the
are at
pavilion.
least 3 or 4.
It's called the Carousel Bar.
You gotta deal with these issues.
We find out about them through osmosis.
We know about them now. So, I guess my question would be, how did the operator get a permit to sell alcohol in a specific defined space from the Department of Consumer
I
Protection
have
without
no
somebody
idea,
here signing off on
I have no
a piece of
idea
paper?
what they regulate,
I
how
would
they
ask-
I don't know how they
regulate.
do it, I don't know how the state
I don't think they do
operates.
it just by, you got 20 acres, you got a restaurant, you can sell alcohol anywhere in that 20 acres?
I don't know.
They don't do it that
I don't
way.
know.
I don't know,
I
I don't know
can't
how it
imagine.
works.
I'll talk to Steve Jacobs.
Okay.
Probably the best person to
All
talk
right.
to. If he inspects the kitchens and bars, he inspects everything.
Yeah.
Right, I know he does.
So,
Pretty sure that liquor control would require some evidence from the town, so somebody
Yeah.
signed something somewhere.
Yeah.
Well,
I have to
They
believe
had
they
a
did.
permit to get the first one, I'm sure.
Understood, but I think as Carl says, that doesn't necessarily parlay out to 5 or 10.
You know, how do we get 3 bars now on this
Right.
property?
But I think
Right.
whatever happened in the past, I think when Jen shared the history on this with me, I quickly realized this is a real hornet's nest. So what I'm hoping that this will do, though, is segregate the issue of the facilities and what gets built there, where and how, from the activities, and give you the tools to manage both. So we may not be able to fix all of these problems, but I think going forward, as long as we sort of manage them carefully, I think it'll be a better situation than you find yourselves in today. So I don't have anything else in terms of my comments, unless you guys have anything else. I think Carl was gonna look at the issue of blasting. Jen was gonna see if you could find the DEP reference for this. I've got a couple of minor changes.
Can we add something about tasting rooms and what that actually entails?
Definition of a tasting room?
Yeah,
That-
is it 3 ounces?
Define it.
Is it up to 20 ounces? Is it?
It's regulated.
Is it
but
for
it's-
sale, or is it just tasting?
Is that,
for-
is that on
there's
the
a
state
state
website
regulation,
too?
isn't there?
I don't know that there is.
Yeah, I
Maybe
read
we
it
could hear
somewhere,
about that
yeah.
at our next meeting.
Yeah, I don't know, I read about it
We're
somewhere.
gonna talk about our November date.
If,
Correct.
you know,
Or,
without,
yeah.
there's a certain
Farm.
amount they can give out without having an alcohol permit in a shot glass.
The offering and free, and tasting of free samples, sale at retail of sealed containers, sale at retail to visitors on the premises. And zoning can prohibit, if you decide you want to.
Right,
So,
be counterproductive. is the
So
word.
I'm sorry, is that state regs you're reading, or state?
yeah, there's somebody had emailed.
And you can
to-
prohibit any of those uses, right?
You could, you
Yeah,
could just.
so the problem comes in when you go from the tasting and the sale of
Right.
closed containers to the sale of open.
Drinks.
Right? That's when you run into the, you know, you're turning into a bar.
Yeah,
But the
Then
food
that's
trucks
something
cover
that
it.
needs to be regulated by the Beverage Commission. In addition to us.
So give me some phraseology about what we mean
Well,
by
I guess I'm trying to
tasting room.
understand, do you
She
want,
wants to
do
know
you want to
what-
morph into
what would
that?
a definition of a tasting room?
I understand, but I'm trying to think, I'm sure I
Does
could.
it include food sales?
No.
A tasting
It's
room,
not
you
a
could be
tasting room
tasting
then.
food.
It's,
No, but.
then it's not a,
Okay,
it's
so-
not a
so then
brewery
putting
or
no
a
food sales
or a
into the
winery.
regulation is fine. Or what definition are we pointed to?
I mean, there's
So
other,
if it's
there's like
only-
even Cassidy Hill, what do? They don't serve food. You go and
You bring your own
buy a
food?
tasting, yeah, you bring your own food with you.
But you're gonna bring a bag of chips and some pretzels, you're not bringing a meal, are
You
you?
bring whatever you
No,
want. You can bring
I stop
picnic
at the
with milk.
takeout place and bring it there.
Right, right, but they're not, you know,
They're not
I don't
serving
know, do
it,
they sell a
but
glass
they're
of
not
wine? Are you trying to
But then they're
determine,
selling
do you sell a
wine.
glass of wine, or do you just get a tasting of wine?
That's what I'm trying to understand.
So the tasting is
And
free,
there's food involved.
okay? The tasting is free.
Not always.
usually.
Not always.
That's what the
I haven't-
offering
I
and
haven't-
tasting of free samples.
I haven't been to one winery where all the tastings were free.
Okay, but
charge.
I'm saying, if you start, you have to decide, look, these are the uses that the state
understand.
will approve. You have to decide which one of these you're comfortable with or not. Once you start, and again, I don't care, once you start offering glasses of wine to visitors and food trucks, it's gonna morph into something that you may not want it to morph into. So you have to decide what level you're comfortable with and what level you're not.
So give me ounces, and shot glass is 1 ounce, right?
No,
No idea. I don't know what ordinarily people do for.
those little
No.
short glasses.
I mean, even those short glasses
I've been to
are, you know,
tastings in a
you get
winery where you get a
5
small
ounces
glass and
by
they
the
put
time
this
you're
much
done.
in the bottom of it.
I understand, but the issue is, again, if we limit the size of the serving, right? If somebody says, well, you know, I'll take,
You mean the free one or the one you pay
servings
for?
of- you know, we're not gonna
They pay
police
for all
that.
of them.
We don't
Right,
even
it's
know
not
what the
worth it.
regulations are
Right.
concerning it. There may be a limit. As I said before, we have friends whose son opened a brewery in Rhode Island. He cannot legally sell more than 3 drinks to you.
Well, how do they keep track of that?
The same way they do in a bar where you can't legally sell a drunk.
Yeah.
But he can't legally sell you more than 3.
Even to take out?
No, closed containers, you can,
By
I
bottle.
mean,
You sell cases.
That's
He
the
sells,
idea,
well,
yeah.
he sells as
You
much as he
taste
can,
it, then you buy the
but
bottle.
that's the
right?
purpose of a tasting room.
Tasting is to
Right.
buy, not,
Yes.
it's
but I think
to
tasting rooms
entice
have
you to
turned
buy.
into something else.
Well, especially if you're gonna allow, under this section F, the sale at retail from the premises of wine or brandy by the glass and bottle to visitors on the premises of the farm winery, for
So you-
consumption on the premises.
So you're saying
That's-
that's what should be, like, we should
Well,
consider
that's the kind of
regulating
things that we need to look at.
That's what I'm
I mean,
saying.
There's
You
a
need-
lot more to this than we
Yeah.
initially
Yeah,
thought.
yeah, you need to discuss that, because if you're fine with that, that's okay, but understand, it's gonna morph into something you probably,
I agree.
yeah,
All right, so, listen, I mean, I think, the next step, I think, for the commission is to decide how you wanna proceed. It seems to me that we are headed into a,
where's the vineyard stuff?
there's a
Well-
couple of minor things hanging. So I think the minor things hanging are, gin's see if she can track down the web link for the DEP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Carl's gonna take a look at the blasting regulation, and then I can modify that and get it in here.
All the
I
packages?
think we're
And the
okay
sign,
now on the
the
signage.
signage.
I think we're okay, Carl
Okay.
said. And I've got some minor tweaks here, including a definition of tasting room that you haven't seen.
Right, but I think you
He's looking for
should,
the section for the
For
vineyard.
tasting room?
Well,
why don't you
vineyard,
take Carl's,
winery, just in the
is that your,
permitted-
It's in the
who
resi-
highlighted this, you, Glenn, or Carl?
Who
This is-
brought that?
I did.
That's,
That's-
yeah,
Okay, I think go through the areas that you highlighted, and areas that you think that we have worry.
I'm gonna see what I can find for tasting room. I think the issue
I
is
got
I get
you.
the commission's
But I think
concern.
Carl raises a valid point here, where he talks about going beyond tasting and purchasing to take,
Yes.
okay? Selling to consume on the premises is a whole different thing.
Yeah, I understand. So, but I think what I also want to put into the definition is to say that, you can't sell food and beverage on the premises as a tasting room, but you can as a restaurant. So if a restaurant's permitted in a business zone, just apply for that. So you can do it.
But if it's a residential zone, it's not
I
gonna
don't
work.
believe it's allowed in a
Yeah.
residential.
Right, it
No.
isn't.
So Carl, page 53 on the bottom is where winery, brewery, distillery is allowed in a business zone. And
well, I see page 30,
page 30, at the bottom is where
Yeah.
a winery and a brewery distillery is allowed.
but right now, it looks like, are the only standards in this entire set, the fact that it's 10 acres?
Yes.
That's it,
Winery is 10.
yeah, and brewery has no,
No,
Hops
has
actually,
none.
you don't need a lot of space for the hops.
I understand.
No,
that,
but
right.
it's,
We went to, there was a presentation about hops, and this fellow that has he uses them, was it for beer?
yeah.
Hmm.
He says you don't have to worry about anybody in Connecticut growing them, because you can buy it, for half the price out from out west.
Yeah, but the thing is that,
I know somebody in
The-
Connecticut's growing them.
and I know
No,
people
but I
in
mean, there's
Connecticut who'd
nothing
love to
wrong
buy
with
it
It's the
because
expense of it.
they're
Well,
a
they're
craft
different.
brewery and they
Right.
wanna have superior ingredients.
Homegrown hops,
Right,
yeah.
Connecticcut hops.
It started
Charge you
charging
an
$10
extra
for
$3
a pack,
less.
you get to charge $20.
Right.
But I guess,
to pick the
so
hops.
I, maybe I missed this the first time around, so,
But this guy here,
selling
he
sizzle.
says, he makes it, he says,
from an herbalist, you have to grow a hell of a lot of hops
Oh, I know.
to make beer, brewery.
all right, so what I want you to think about, right now, it appears the only standards for vineyards or breweries in residential zones is that if you have 10 acres, you can do it. So you need to hone in on the language and say what this actually means.
Okay.
Tasting room only, and that the sale of sealed containers is permitted,
Right.
but no on-site
For
consumption
consumption
or whatever it
off
is.
the
So we need to
premises.
get, if that's what we need to get, make sure,
I
otherwise
agree.
people are gonna
We
come in
leave
and start
Pandora's
asking.
door open.
And the next thing is the tent outside for the,
Right.
because it's a beautiful place, the vineyard for people to get married, and then, all of that stuff that goes along with it. It's,
Well, they already have a special use permit there for events as accepted.
Where?
Well, we're not
One.
supposed to, we're not
Well,
supposed to be
right,
talking
you're not
about a
sup- yeah.
specific property.
We don't have any
Right.
applications.
This is rules
Right.
in general.
Yeah.
But people talk about applications that aren't even existing.
do they
all
need
the
a
time.
liquor
Right, they do.
license to,
Which is-
serve?
they need whatever the regulation
They-
statute
Yeah.
provides.
I'll email
But
that,
it's not like,
everyone, I just got that
package
today.
store, 'cause a package store.
Well, there's no on-site
Yes.
consumption
Yeah.
allowed
Yeah.
at a package store.
Because I know at a package store that they go on, they don't deal those out that easily, they go on the population of an area.
Well,
Right,
that's
there's
different.
only
There's
so
no,
many,
That's different.
there's
there's no
limit.
limitations on restaurants or, the only, yeah, package stores are totally different, so.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But you need to decide, take a look at that
No,
section.
agreed.
And see what you're comfortable with.
So if I understand correctly, I'm gonna find the definition for tasting room. We're gonna allow the sale of sealed containers on the premises of the brewery or winery or distillery, but not including sales for on-premises consumption.
You just stick that in there for now and see.
Right, it's right here. I mean, if you look at this, it's
No, but
right
that-
here in E.
That allows it to happen unless the community
If you look at the
prohibits.
next section.
So we're gonna prohibit.
Yeah, they'll go to the next page. It says all those things are included as far as the state's concerned, unless the local zoning authority says, no, we don't want this.
Great, okay.
So we're gonna say we don't want.
So for right now,
on-premises-
we're just
We're
gonna
gonna
go with
list the
sealed
things that they
containers.
say no to.
On-premises
Right.
consumption.
Yeah, and then if you wanna work with it 5
Same
years
thing,
from
but
now.
backwards.
Yeah.
So they're gonna be able to buy tastings.
whatever's
I
permitted in the
understand.
tasting room.
I'm gonna find the,
Whatever
permit.
tasting.
And don't forget, a property owner can come in and lobby us to
Change.
the
Right.
regulations
Right.
to suit
I mean,
something, but right
here
off the
again, one of my
bat, we're not
concerns
just
is-
giving it.
As we begin to get bogged down with some of these details, we're pushing back adoption and
no, I think what I would like to urge you to consider is that we schedule a public hearing.
I agree.
So my sense right now is we're headed into a time of year, it's gonna take us a little bit of time to get this together. You need a minimum of 30 days for the regional notice because we're
Right.
affecting land within 500 feet of a town boundary. That's gonna put us smack into Thanksgiving, Christmas timeframe, which I don't think is a good time
No,
to
I know,
adopt new
but-
zoning
No,
regs.
no.
So unless you were really heart set on a January 1, 2020 date, my suggestion would be that we schedule a public hearing for January. And I work with Carl
I
and
think we
Jen
ought
to
to do
pull
it.
the trigger. And I will, use revisions markings, that any changes that we make based on anything that comes in will be highlighted for your consideration, and we can change it on the fly. So we get to the
I'd
public
make a
hearing next
motion to
week.
that effect and suggest that in the interim, if we need to, we have another meeting.
So would
I
that
mean,
be
it's
our?
at the point where Glenn takes care of the issues that we brought up tonight and Carl has a chance to digest it, we'll have enough.
So are you gonna pick a specific date right now in January?
I would like to.
Yes,
Sure, motion.
cause
I think,
January's, I fly south in the wintertime.
wait, Carl, you haven't made your plans yet.
I have,
so-
that's why I'm waiting, this is exactly what I'm waiting for.
So when are you?
Tomorrow morning,
So
I'm
why
gonna
do
make
you
my
wait?
plan.
What
why
date
don't-
did you-
Oh, I thought you said you
I don't have
already
any
made
plans.
them. Well, okay.
No, I'm just telling you.
So our normal meeting date in January,
Would be the,
The 20th,
which
that's
is Martin Luther King Day.
Day. The week before is the 13th,
Let's do it the week before.
Monday the 13th.
Monday the 13th?
sounds good to me.
Will you be in town? Will you be in the region?
He will be, he has planned.
I haven't made any, I was doing, my whole winter is evolved,
Around
it's
there?
gonna revolve around this.
That's just the beginning
That's how
of the winter.
important you are.
I mean, you could leave right after Christmas and be back.
So you only got us, nobody else?
No, there's plenty
Yeah,
of
you got
others.
plenty.
When's our next
But I don't care
meeting?
about those.
Well,
Well, we're
need
doing
to
our
be able
November
to-
meeting, we have to schedule our November meeting,
Yeah, we do.
because we have the election on the 5th.
Right,
So
we can't, we
do
know
it
we
that
can't do
week.
it that week.
Then we
so-
have Veterans Day on the 11th.
Who cares?
I'm not here.
What, the-
On the,
No,
you mean a
yeah.
Monday?
A Monday.
But the 12th.
What about Tuesday?
How about Tuesday?
There's something going on.
How
so
about Wednesday?
In what, in every room here? Like, we can't, we're just a
The
small.
13th?
You guys should
Little.
try it. My head's spinning. I looked at the calendar today, and I have dates written down of what's available.
So let
Okay,
us know
so
it works.
Wednesday, November 13th, or Monday, November 18th, or Tuesday, the 19th.
We just said Wednesday the 13th,
Right.
and you started saying no.
Right. No, I
I'll
didn't.
say Wednesday the 13th? That was Monday the 13th in January.
So that's just the
Correct.
next,
So
the
this
next,
is November.
it's gonna be a special meeting, but that's your
Are you available?
normal business.
Well,
Wednesday.
right, and all they're gonna discuss is
What you wanna
requirements of
tell-
what they want for
Yes.
December.
Mm-hmm.
For
For
the
the
public
hill-
hearing
for the
on
hill
the
sale.
Hill sale
geez.
application.
Correct,
Mhm.
but that's at the meeting, that will be on the.
Yeah, so
Any other
please make,
And other
I hope
business,
that
right,
works
but,
for you too.
well, it'll be a special meeting, so it'll have to be specifically
Mhm.
listed, but.
Too
Well,
late
if
for
it's a
Wednesday
special
golf,
meeting,
so
we're
it
not
should
adding
be
a lot
there.
of other stuff on.
Yeah, yes, the
No,
12th,
no.
does- yeah,
To
the
discuss
13th
that
works.
application. I don't know, I guess, are you gonna wanna talk about the regulations at all?
What?
Should I put that on the agenda,
No.
on November 13th?
No?
I
Do you
think-
wanna
Do we-
discuss,
I don't-
look at the winery stuff?
I would need stuff from both of you.
We're gonna have stuff,
Not for you to come, but like, they're gonna get this list from wineries.
But you could give
I
us
have to put it
the,
on, if they wanna talk about it, I have to put it on the,
agenda,
Agenda.
because it's a special
I
meeting.
would say, you know what, we're going for January.
so leave it alone.
No, we're going for January for the public hearing.
So I will
But for what
prepare-
they wanna restrict or not
Yeah.
restrict for
If you're
wineries.
getting back to us
I'm
with
gonna
it,
craft something and we'll talk about it in January.
no,
You don't want them to discuss what
No,
they.
we want.
no, we
We
wanna
wanna
be able to
read-
have
we're
the
gonna have the
public
public
look at.
hearing in January.
We're gonna have the public hearing in
So
January.
they can read the long,
So
thing.
November
Sooner or later, I
December
gotta pull the
meeting.
trigger on the regs.
Right, but if they do-
Understand, but
So, well, I guess, would it be easy to do a one sheet of the changes that we, the three
Talked
of us
about
have
tonight?
made and talked about between today
definition of a tasting
and
room,
November 13th?
you're not gonna wait till, give us that until January, are you?
That's what I was saying.
Oh,
The changes
No, we
are-
wanna discuss.
We wanna have a public hearing in January.
I understand, but the regs would be there, we'd have a public hearing,
But
now
are
if you wanna
we-
change them, we can.
But,
It's
so
part of
could
the
we
public hearing
discuss,
process.
could we discuss a vineyard and a tasting room and just whatever? Can we discuss that and then I send you a statement from the commission, and you can compare it to what you come up with. Like, so what, they need to read, they haven't been able to read and digest this of what the state says can happen.
Okay, I think I made a note in my calendar for both January 13th, and then my whole trigger date with you, Jen, is December 9th. So by December 9,
So we can talk about it on the
to make our
13th.
statutory deadline.
Right.
It has to put it on the agenda.
Right.
Because December 9th, you're saying, it has to go to CROG.
Well, that's it, I need to make sure I get anything I have to you, because that's gonna allow you to meet the 30-day deadline. So check my
Okay.
date though for me, okay?
Okay.
I can certainly move it up before that, but I think,
I'll put it on the agenda just so, we don't have to, they don't have to go into detail.
Put it,
if
yeah,
they don't
put it
want
on
to.
the agenda.
As long as it's on there.
If you don't wanna talk about it, you don't talk about it. but
Right.
My sense is that whatever he just, I know what he scribbled on is probably where you're gonna land anyway.
Right.
So, I can't imagine that's gonna take more than a few minutes, and the definition of a tasting room is gonna be
Right.
what it is, right?
I might have to visit a lot of them just to.
You do all the research you need?
I'll come with you,
By
Glenn,
November
and take
13th, I
notes.
have to do it all myself.
Just go up Route 7, hit all the distilleries and everything, you'll be all set.
Maybe-
Just be going northwest.
I should go, because I don't drink, so I should
Go over
go.
to Mass.
Maybe we need a field
Go over
trip
to
to
Mass.
see
You
what
need
one
a
looks like.
designated driver.
We need a
There's big
field
one up in
trip.
Mass, Charlton, Mass.
We'll just have to make an agenda for it, because it'll be a meeting.
No, there is.
If
My
three
treehouse
more
or
of you
something like
go.
that. My
Yeah, we'll
wife
have to
drives
make
up
an
there to buy
agenda.
beer for my
We'll
son.
hire,
beer
so
place.
like,
take the summers, we'll take the elderly bus.
Oh, is that the place where the line?
Yeah.
Well, you can go right up Route
They
7.
release like
idea.
they just have a release whatever every
13.
6 weeks, and there's a line down the street.
And
They
sell
do.
out every time.
And our December meeting will be on.
You
I
just
don't
go right
get
up
it.
Route 7 into
Okay,
Mass.
can we make
Is
a
it
motion
beer,
to
just
adjourn?
beer?
We gotta adjourn.
So
Like,
moved.
Right?
Paige made a
Isn't beer
motion.
just beer?
Second.
We'll say Dan seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
We adjourn at